Good morning, everyone. You are very welcome to Day 1, the Climate Action Economic Opportunities Local Authorities Supporting Enterprise. The panel would be delighted to receive any questions you may have. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your PC or laptop screen. If you're using an iPad, you will find this feature located at the top of your screen. Without further ado, I would now like to hand you over to the Chief Executive with Offaly County Council, Anna Marie Delaney. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helena. Good morning, everybody, and to everyone joining us this morning for the Climate Action and Economic Enterprises Conference, Local Authorities Supporting Enterprise. My name is Anna Marie Delaney. I'm Chief Executive with Offaly County Council, and I'm Chair of the steering group which is driving the exploration of economic opportunities from climate change project on behalf of the local government sector. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this two-day virtual conference. And indeed, being virtual, we are duly playing our part in minimising emissions this morning. On behalf of the County and City Management Association, CCMA, I would like to extend a particular word of welcome to the Oireachtas members joining us this morning, the elected members of local authorities from across the country, my fellow chief executives, directors of services, heads of local enterprise offices, and all of the staff of the local authorities that are stepping forward to address challenges on climate change on behalf of the local government sector, and those helping to facilitate climate-informed practices and policies within the realm of economic development and enterprise. You're all very welcome this morning. Particularly pleased that over the course of this two-day event, we will hear key messages from two of our senior cabinet ministers. Today from An Tánaiste, Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, Leo Varadkar TD, and then tomorrow from the Minister for the Environment, Climate and Communications, Eamon Ryan TD, who work through their respective departments, agencies and programmes to provide assistance to the local government sector in our response to climate change. A very busy day ahead for both ministers today with Budget 22 taking place today. As a sector, we appreciate that climate change is an unprecedented challenge for our natural environment, our economy and our society. And there are significant challenges ahead in translating the strengthening climate policy, in working with our local communities, in the transition to a climate neutral future. And I suppose really we have had first-hand experience of those challenges and the challenges of that transition here in Offaly and the wider Midlands region, with the move away from carbon-intensive industries that have been the economic and social backbone of many of our rural communities for generations. And the challenges and the opportunities ahead as we strive to fulfil our obligations on climate targets are underpinned by the need to enable the creation of alternative, sustainable employment sources and the upskilling of people in new areas of technology, and so in turn to create and maintain sustainable communities. Over the course of this morning and tomorrow morning, I have no doubt that the speakers will both inform and inspire each and every one of us to explore and work to realise that economic opportunity from climate action. The conference programme has been designed to provide information around the evolving policy context, along with case studies, and will inform you with an opportunity, or will afford you with an opportunity to engage in a panel discussion at the end of each day. I want to thank all of our speakers for their contribution to this event in particular, and the conference is part of the work of the Climate Action Economic Opportunities Project Steering and Working Groups, convened under the CCMA Committee for Business Enterprise Innovation, Urban Town Economic Renewal, and to thank them all for their support and work on this. And I also wish to express my appreciation to the committee and steering working groups for their work on the overall project. And I pay particular thanks this morning to Breda Maher from the Eastern Midlands Climate Action Regional Office for her work in preparing for this event. So, without further ado, it is with great pleasure that I introduce you to our MC for the conference for these 2 days, Mr. Jonathan Healy. Jonathan is Managing Director of Healy Communications, and Jonathan may be familiar to some of you. He was previously presenter with News Talk and a senior correspondent with Sky News. Jonathan was our MC at the Economic Opportunities Climate Action event held previously in Tullamore in 2019. And we're delighted that he's here to work with us again today and tomorrow and to continue that conversation. I sincerely hope that everybody enjoys the event and benefits from it, and thank you all for your participation. And I'll hand over now to Jonathan. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning, Anna Marie. Thank you so much for that. Lovely to speak to you. You left out the Today Show with Dahi and Maura, which is another one of my bits and pieces that I do. But that happens too. We don't talk about climate change too much on that one, but we should do. And good morning, everybody. It is a real pity that we can't be together. We were so close to having a real life in-person event, but not quite there yet. But the good news is, as Anna Marie said, that we kept our own carbon emissions down by staying in our offices and our homes. So I'm coming to you today from Cork. We've already had a contribution from Tullamore, and we'll be going right around the country over the course of the next 2 days to hear about some of the brilliant innovation that is taking place at local level that is steering climate change and driving us into the future. We have got a lot to talk about over the next while. The last 18 to 20 months has taught us, if nothing else, that we are capable of doing incredible things really quickly, and that local authorities can, in fact, lead the way. It's a very unusual thing for local authorities, because when it comes to big ticket things, you are both the brake and the accelerator. You're trying to get people to do things quickly, but then you've also got a whole load of statutory responsibilities to protect certain things that need to be implemented at the same time. So how can we make sure that local authorities become that driving force, become the enabler for businesses as we try to change for the better how we do things? But what I'm certain about is that the world has moved so quickly in the last 20 months that this is going to pick up pace. And what is fascinating is how Ireland has an abundance of natural resources that we are now looking at in a completely different way. Many of you will be of my vintage when we were told in school that the only natural resource we had was sugar. And that was the only thing that we could export. Whereas now we're actively talking about exporting energy from our island, having sustained and fulfilled ourselves at that point. So we are on an amazing journey. We are just at the start of it, and local authorities will be the ones who will be helping drive it at local level by connecting with local businesses, by enabling local businesses. And we are going to hear so much about that, as I said, over the course of the next 2 days. So what do we have first up? Well, we are going to hear in just a minute from the AILG. Then we're going to hear from Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, who will talk to us about what government is doing. We're going to hear from Maynooth University. We're going to hear from the EIB, and we're going to hear from the EPA, amongst others, in the first part. And then we're going to hear from businesses who are doing great things and local authorities who are doing great things to show those synergies and how businesses can link up. So it really is an exciting agenda. We do want to hear from you, no matter where you are. I can see there's 200 of you online already this morning, showing great enthusiasm. Well done. There is a chat box at the very bottom of the screen if you're watching on a laptop. If you're watching on an iPad, it is above us. So do put the questions in, because we have a question and answer session that is at the very end of today. That's going to begin at around 12:15. And don't worry, there will be a chance to go off and grab a cup of tea somewhere in the middle as well. So that is what we have ahead in terms of agenda, folks. But from the bottom of the country, we go right up to the top to begin with. And I'd like to invite the new president of the AILG, Councillor Nicholas Crossan, who is up in Buncrana in County Donegal. Nicholas, how are you, sir? It's lovely to talk to you. And I'd like to hand over to you now to formally welcome everybody today. Oh, Nicholas, your microphone, your microphone is on mute conversations that I'm going to have there. Can we hear you now?
Sorry. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that lovely introduction, and greetings from a soft day in Donegal, I would say, from one end of the county to the other. Good morning, Oireachtas members, elected representatives, chief executives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me as president of the Association of Irish Local Government to address this morning's CCMA conference that explores economic opportunities arising from climate change, climate action. This is a very important topic. It's a very timely one also. Climate change is a daunting reality for us all. We know that it's not a problem that we can solve easily or overnight, and we're too familiar with how devastating the impacts and consequences of global warming can be to our local authorities. I don't need to go too far to give an example of how destructive the forces of nature can be with the extreme weather events. What happened here in the Inishowen Peninsula in 2017, within with a matter of a couple of hours, remains etched on the minds of the communities. Homes and properties were flooded and destroyed. Communities were displaced. Major roads and bridges just washed away. Such was the force of the surges of water. The livelihoods of farmers and businesses placed under threat from their losses. The utter devastation was unprecedented, and what it takes for people and communities, businesses to come back from that is just incredible. The science tells us that because of climate change, we should expect more extreme weather events and more frequently. That's not an option or a reality we should accept too easily. We need to act now to tackle the cause of climate change, and the preparation to deal with climate change is critical. I'm delighted that local government is leading a charge for positive climate action through the work of local authorities. And I must take this opportunity to commend the work of the Climate Action Regional Offices and the Climate Action Training Programme that they developed to support us as elected representatives and local authority staff to increase our knowledge, to raise awareness of the magnitude of the challenges, the solutions required, and the opportunities that can come about from addressing climate change. It is on the opportunity side of the conversation that brings us here today. Anna-Marie Delaney's welcome address on the conference brochure talks about the transformative solutions required for decarbonisation. Without doubt, the next decade will require us to rethink radically how we live, work, and invest in our places and communities. As elected representatives working on behalf of our constituents, we have a duty to support the delivery and achievement of our national climate obligations. At the same time, we will work to support the journey of transition that our communities will face. And this journey is not going to be an easy one. There will be challenges ahead and hard decisions that will need to be made for the benefit of our natural environment, our local economies, and the lives of future generations to come. We must focus on the positives and the exciting opportunities that come from addressing climate change through innovation. New, cleaner, greener technologies. We can deliver more sustainable communities, homes, new opportunities for jobs, and enhanced skills for the future green economy. I want to commend the CCMA on their organisation of this conference here today, and in particular, Anne-Marie Delaney, Chief Executive of Offaly County Council, as Chair of the Climate Action and Economic Opportunity Steering Group. Let us not be found wanting and rising to the challenges that climate change presents. I wish you well in your deliberations today and tomorrow, and in realising the opportunities in our communities. Thank you.
Nicholas, thank you very much indeed. I have to say it's a soft day here in Cork as well. It's not just unique to Donegal. I think we're probably going to see a lot of grey cloud out through windows over the course of the next few hours. But thank you very much, and good luck with your new term as president. I believe you only took on that role in the last couple of days. So good luck as you enjoy the year ahead, hopefully a little bit more settled than the year that has just passed us by. The Irish government admitted once that it was a laggard when it came to addressing climate change and the targets that had already been set for 2030 and beyond. It is a game of catch-up, and no doubt we will hear a little bit more in the budget today about how the government is going to catch up. But it's not just about levying charges, it's about setting the tone and setting the environment so that Ireland can become a leader in climate change, not just in Europe, but globally. And that's what we're discussing here today, how that can be achieved. But our next speaker is amongst those tasked at government with making a real difference. Will you please welcome the Taoiseach and Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, Leo Varadkar, TD.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the Eastern and Midlands Climate Action Regional Office for inviting me to make this keynote address today. Climate change is a threat to all of us, and transitioning to a low-carbon economy is a major priority for the government. With our new climate law, Ireland is now one of the most ambitious countries in the world on climate. Our targets will require a huge shift in the energy we use, how we manage our waste, our housing stock, and transport systems. So this conference and your discussion of the role that business will play in transitioning our economy and society towards a sustainable future couldn't be more timely or appropriate. Businesses will have a really important role to play in the overall effort. And I see climate action as an enormous opportunity to create jobs, new businesses, and grow existing ones. Building sustainable, low-carbon businesses is now an imperative from a social and economic perspective, and also from a competitiveness and financial point of view. Companies and sectors that fail to take steps to decarbonise their activities or reevaluate their business models will struggle to create value for their customers and shareholders, and will become increasingly uncompetitive economically. On the other hand, those that adapt quickly, move first, will have the most to gain. I know many of you here today have the skills, expertise, and experience to make these changes and take the step up that's required. We will need new skills in this transformation. Our increased climate ambition will drive demand for energy-efficient retrofits, the installation of heat pumps and other renewable heating options, and a substantial increase in onshore and offshore wind and solar. Based on previous climate action plans, it was estimated that the transition to a low carbon economy will create between 22,000 and 27,000 new jobs by 2030. Now that our ambition has doubled, I've no doubt that the potential for job creation has also increased substantially, and we need to make sure that we have the pipeline of skilled workers to take up these jobs when they become available. The Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment and its agencies have a wide variety of programmes to help businesses no matter where they are on their journey. That includes the Local Enterprise Office Green for Micro programme and the Enterprise Ireland Climate Enterprise Action Fund, both of which were launched earlier this year. Work is also at an advanced stage in my department and Minister Ryan's department's work to develop a simple online carbon calculator tool, which will provide an individual action plan for SMEs and micro-enterprises as they begin their decarbonisation journey, directing them to incentives and programmes to reduce emissions. Local authorities also have a crucial role to play, as they are embedded in the community and have responsibility for a wide range of activities. As we transition to a net zero economy, it's increasingly important that we at all levels of national, regional and local government view climate action through the lens of opportunity. Conferences such as this one provide the necessary platform for us to build on during periods of transformative change. If the past year has taught us anything, it's that no challenge is insurmountable in the face of our collective spirit and ingenuity. I have every faith that we can employ those same traits to respond to the crisis. So I'll leave it there. Enjoy the conference, and thank you to the Eastern and Midlands Climate Action Regional Office for inviting me to speak to you today. Thank you very much.
Tánaiste, thank you very much indeed for your comments. Indeed, it is worth remembering that we are focused on collectively doing this. This isn't any individual, this isn't any single company that is going to be responsible, or any local authority. This is a community effort. If we are to get to net zero, everybody has to row in behind the project. And that's what we're going to talk about over the course of the next couple of hours. We're going to hear various different speakers. We're going to hear various people who will give us an insight into what is being done on the ground, what examples are out there, and what perhaps you could use in your local area if you aren't doing so already. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that the local authorities have evolved so much over the years. I'd absolutely love speaking with the local enterprise offices, wherever they are. I'm very familiar with the ones in Cork, but I've worked with others right around the country that are dealing with some fabulous companies that have emerged in the last while with ideas that are mind-blowingly good and have potential not just here, but elsewhere in Ireland and elsewhere around the world. So those are the kind of companies, the ideas that we should be supporting. And my next speaker is somebody who also believes that, and who believes that there is that huge potential just waiting to be tapped, and local authorities can indeed lead the way. To discuss local authorities working with local business on climate action, business models for a sustainable future, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. John Cullen, who is the Associate Professor at Maynooth University School of Business. John, good morning to you, sir. Lovely to see you. Hopefully a little bit sunnier in Maynooth than it is anywhere else. Just for all speakers who are joining this morning, you have your allocated time, and because I can't jump up and down to the back of the room and point to a non-existent watch, what I'll do is I'll give you 5 minutes from the very end just to alert you that you're coming at the end of your time. But John, I can see you're sharing your screen successfully already. You are ahead of me and no longer in need of my services. I shall hand over to you.
Wouldn't say that, Jonathan. Thank you very much. The weather is gorgeous here in Maynooth, as always, under these lovely skies. I think we're doing a bit better than we are in Cork or elsewhere at the moment. Thanks very much for your time. I hope you could see that. You're seeing the full screen there, Jonathan. Is that correct for the slides? That's all working okay? Okay. So first of all, I also just want to echo my thanks to the conference organisers, to the CCMA, to Anna Marie, to Alan Dunny, and especially to the legendary Breda Marr, who's done fantastic work and putting everything together in the background, and also to the Taoiseach. I mean, if you look at the words, I managed to scribble down some of them just as he was speaking there, and he was talking about the move towards a climate neutral economy. Low carbon business future, and also that significant existential challenge that we're all facing into of climate change. You know, it's probably the most important thing that anybody can be working on right at this particular moment. And he also mentioned that business will have a massive role to play in this. The fact, I suppose, one of the ways I'd like to begin this discussion is to look at that big challenge that we're facing into that great sense of fear that has been generated around the area of climate change. But climate action is the positive perspective on this. It's the fact that we do have time to do something, that we can do things. And most importantly, as the Taoiseach was saying there, for us as working in local authorities, working in local businesses, working in universities, or whatever it is that we're doing, we can view climate action through the lens of opportunity. And the Taoiseach, of course, mentioned there that the transition to a low carbon economy has the potential to create between, I think he said 22 to 27,000 by 2030. So when we're looking at this, and I did scribble down kind of a lengthier quote there, and I hope I get this right. He said the companies and sectors that fail to decarbonize their activities or reevaluate their business models, I'm going to look at business models in a minute, will struggle to create value for their customers and shareholders and will become increasingly uncompetitive economically. Now, those who adapt quickly and move first will have the most to gain. Look at those words: business models and adapt. And when I look at adaptation as something to address, we could look at the ways in which climate change and climate action are framed in different ways. On the other hand, we've got big bang climate action, this idea that societies in general will need to make radical readjustments. We'll need to change the way that we do business, the way that we travel, the way that we meet, the way that we consume, the way we do everything in order to save the planet that we're on. But interestingly enough, the models that are used by local authorities around the world to do this don't talk about that radical change. They talk about working with the realities of the local business and social environment in which we find ourselves as a group of people. And the word local is really important there. I'm thinking of Kate Raworth's Donut Economics, and her point is that if we are to live within the planetary ceiling, if we're to stop polluting the environment, stop, acidifying our oceans, poisoning our air, doing whatever it is that we're doing to make our environment unlivable, if we were to stop all of that immediately, it would have huge social and economic impacts on people, but most importantly, on the people who are least to blame for climate change. Okay, so we have to work within the social and economic reality in which we find ourselves to ensure that we create a fairer world for everybody. So this is on the other side of the slide. That's I think a picture from one of the notes from Darwin's notebooks about finches. And this is the point: is that to survive, life on this planet and human beings on this planet and all life on this planet has always survived by adapting to the local circumstances in which it finds itself. So we have the top level European Green Deal, we have the low carbon bill, we have the climate action plan, we have all of these things that are coming into play. But just as Nicholas was saying earlier, is that as Jonathan was saying earlier, local authorities are the ones who interpret this at a local level to make change happen, and always have done this. This is where local authorities play perhaps one of the biggest roles, working side by side with local business and making sure that climate action is successful and it's real. So one of the things, one example of this was when I began working with Breda and Alan and the working group and the steering group and Anna Marie and all the other members from right around Ireland. We began by focusing on two kind of compass setting pieces of research. One was a survey of the local enterprise authorities and the local enterprise divisions of local authorities throughout Ireland. Fantastic amount of interest and energy and concern for this as well, for this area. But I think primarily what I'm going to focus on here is the policy analysis report on which we on which we began. Now we're talking about different parts of an environment working together to help people adapt in a way to have successful climate action. And that being part of evolutionary process since the time Darwin and his counterparts identified it. This was a similar example of a group of organizations, of units that work at a local level: the CCMA, the LGMA, the Climate Action Regional Offices, Maynooth University Social Sciences Institute, and Local Authorities Ireland, all came together to work on this project in a way that is trying to produce successes for everyone. And just to quickly go through the policy analysis report, we interrogated 10 European level documents, 11 national documents, and 32 local authority climate action plans, right from the European Green Deal. As you know, when we say there were 10 documents, that's an extensive amount of a documentary collection that we're looking in there. So over the period of about 2 months, a deep dive into the policy on everything, all climate action documents, everything to do with dealing with the climate crisis and the climate emergency, from the perspective of what economic opportunities could be created or needed to be addressed through them as a result. And we identified 7. At all levels: EU, national, or local authority level in Ireland. And these include, the renovation wave, retrofitting, afforestation, research, innovation, technology, transportation, renewable energies, working hubs, and promoting the circular economy. So we looked to those, just a kind of a quick summary of what we identified. And this was conducted towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year. So ending, I think, around, we presented our initial report at the end of January. So there's been more action and activity since. But look at these focal areas: renovation, retrofit, construction. At European and national level, they were talking about the renovation and retrofitting of public and private buildings, specifically local authority owned dwellings, which we want opportunities to bring them to a minimum BER level. And of course, local authorities can compete for public service contracts in this area. But at the local authority level, once again, constructing, renovating, and retrofitting local authority owned buildings and infrastructure, including a range of different areas like public lighting, constructing near zero energy new builds, and also the maintaining the RMI sector, the area, maintaining, repairing assets, including vehicles, buildings, properties, coastal and flood defences, and grasslands. So by incentivizing renovation, retrofitting, and construction, look at the economic opportunities that exist in that area. Of course, research, innovation, new tech development, massive area as well. Opportunities for local enterprises in this area of that work towards creating a carbon neutral circular economy. Now, specifically, these enterprises can benefit from EU, national, and regional funding streams. At a local level, developing green innovations and technologies while working with the LEOs, specifically in the areas that were mentioned, were, of course, anaerobic digestion, green roof tech, construction and retrofitting again, watering of trees and plants, forestry. Leading on to transportation, a critical area is developing improved transportation systems, such as constructing greenway and blueway routes, establishing car and bike sharing enterprises. Lots of opportunities exist in the installation and maintenance of electrical vehicle charging points. Local authority level, the same again, the maintenance, provision of electric vehicles, bike share, car share schemes, and bus infrastructure and services. Forestation, of course, this linked to the previous climate action plan, but aims to increase the afforestation rates on an annual basis, to be achieved from engaging with landowners of all types of farmers, local authorities, state bodies, to efficiently and timely harvest timber for delivery to market, but other areas there as well. Really noticeable at the local authority a level, where we're talking about the planting and maintenance of trees and hedgerows, reforestation, control of invasive species, but really using afforestation to increase biodiversity right throughout the country. Renewable energies, this isn't surprising, developing new technologies, again, anaerobic digestion, biomass, heat recovery, carbon capture, biomethane. At local authority level, again, opportunities for installation and maintenance of solar panels and replacement of gas boilers. Now, Pat Doherty is going to be talking about what, the great work that Clare County Council have been doing in relation to working hubs next. But at EU and national level, the National Broadband Plan offers opportunities for installing, maintaining broadband services that will increase the number of enterprise hubs or working hubs and shared office spaces. And of course, at local authority level, huge opportunities for constructing and operating those. So I'm going to talk about a little bit here is the promotion of the green economy. And there's a huge opportunities here for domestic recycling industry. And circular economy is often discussed in relation to waste management and recycling. I'm going to talk about circular economy business models, which is slightly different in a minute or two. So many local authorities aim to promote and encourage recycling and waste recovery, such as C&D waste, and plant waste, and to identify sites for additional recycling centres and bring bank facilities. Now, when we're talking about I suppose the way that the policy documents look at the area of circular economy. But a circular economy business model is slightly different. I think we're all familiar with a linear economy business model, which, let's say, we'll take probably the most traditional one of the lot, where we extract a non-renewable resource from the ground, then we process it or manufacture a product from it, we distribute it, usually, through transportation fleets, we sell it, and then the person who buys it uses it, and then they dispose of it, so it goes back into a landfill. And these traditional linear business economy business models, they rely on high levels of production, a rapid consumption and waste. The value embedded in products or materials are lost over their life cycle, and these are socially, environmentally, and economically inefficient in the way that they use and manage resources. On the other hand, circular economy business models, they try to retain whatever it is that we've used, retain the value of that after we've finished with it. It's a more efficient way of using and managing resources. So instead of disposing in a product at the time, we try to retain the value or whatever it is that that has resulted after we've used it. Instead of selling it, we repair it, or we reuse it, we somehow recombine it and put it back into the environment. Instead of distributing it, we redistribute it, so the value is kept inside our economic module. Instead of processing and manufacture it, we refurbish it or remanufacture it. Instead of extracting it, we recycle it. But how can we create or renew business models based on circular economy principles like this? So one of I do a lot of research in this area, and I'm hoping to work with Irish companies very shortly to look at the different types of circular business economy models that can be used. The point is that there's not one. There are lots of ones that exist that are relevant to local needs, and there's a real site of innovation for people in this space. One of the papers that have been more cited more recently have been by Nancy Bokken and Paavo Ritala, working in Maastricht and Lund University, and they've published an approach that will help local businesses working with local authorities, but mainly for local businesses in the first instance, to try and look at what they're currently doing to rethink their business model. And they said that there's two kind of main choices that business face into when they're in the space. First of all is what type of resource strategy will they use? They can use a slowing resource strategy, which means you slow resource loops by developing products that last longer. So you can charge more for them, or you can introduce services that will help maintain them. The second one is closing resource loops by recycling materials after use or reusing them. And the final one is by narrowing loops, by using less material in manufacturing processes. Then you've got a choice of 2 innovation strategies. Open innovation, where you collaborate with your stakeholders in your market or your business ecosystem to create new form of values for customers. So that's open, you're working with customers. Or the more traditional type, which is closed innovation, where companies work in their lab or in their marketing departments to develop new offerings to the market themselves. And if you take those 2 as a matrix, slowing, closing, or narrowing the loop, or open or closed innovation, you end up with one of these matrix that business academics are usually are very happy with. So if you look at, say, the first one here, opening, narrowing, this is really concerned with using collaborations to reduce environmental impact associated with products or IT or production processes. So, for example, one that I read about recently, where companies group together with other companies is Beosol, which I think is based in Westmeath. Which focused on the fact that brewers, particularly craft brewers, well, all brewers, I think, they discard spent grain following the brewing process. And Beosol, rather than this going to a landfill or being put or being discarded or turned into waste, they take it and turn it back into flour, which is then sold onto other shops. So that's the opening narrow one. The opening slowing one extends the product life cycle by partnering with external stakeholders. Think of H&M. Introducing circularity to its supply chain. Now, fashion, as we know, is very difficult to do ethically because of its, I think, traditionally built on a use or dispose model. But H&M have begun to partner with secondhand clothes sellers online to encourage reuse or to create additional economic value. To close the loop, we are looking at reducing waste by bringing resources from external ecosystems, making new offerings to customers. For example, the blue or circular economy initiatives, where washed up fishing nets and plastics are returned into shoes, like a G-Star Raw, which is Pharrell Williams partner companies, or Nike recycling 1 billion plastic bottles a year to make football kits. For the closed model, the closed narrowing model, and this is the most common one, and I think the one that the example of this that's most often referred to is that Apple, who are designing products for durability rather than disposability, providing regular software updates so products can stay in use rather than go into a landfill, removing plastic from all of its packaging, really noticeable with new Apple products, using recycled metals and materials and trading in, incentivizing the trade-in of old devices, and using clean energy sources more. Closed slowing is about creating more value from fewer resources by focusing on the long-term value and long-lasting design. So Levi's, for example, did a life cycle analysis in 2007, and they discovered that each pair of 501 jeans uses 1,000 gallons of water just in the washing over its life cycle. So if it was washed if each pair of 501s was washed after every 10 wears, after every 2 wears, the result would be an 80% reduction of water and energy use. So as a result of that, they introduced a waterless program to make jeans look lived in without constantly rewashing them, and put together an education program, talk about the benefits of cold water washes and air dryings, and constantly reporting new environmental innovation and research in that area. The final one is closed innovation, concerned with closing the loop. And the idea behind this is to create value post-consumption. It allows companies to take back and recover materials that that would otherwise go to waste. IKEA have recently rebranded their bargain corner to the Circular Hub, as you might know, where you can also sell back products for resale or for reuse. Patagonia, of course, clothing range, pioneers very much in this area. They've introduced a wardware offering where clothes can be returned to the store and refunded or exchanged for Clore credit. And of course, Timberland, who designed their tires, their car tires, to be taken back and to be recycled as shoes. Now, as shoes or other products that they sell in their clothing range. The point is that there are not only numerous circular business economy models, but there are opportunities to craft and create new circular economy models that are relevant to business, that is a level that is local and specific to their needs of their customers and suppliers. Now, so how can local businesses and local authorities who are interested in crafting new business models, how can they do change these according to the principles of the circular economy? I'm not sure how am I doing on time, Jonathan.
5 minutes. I was just about to tell you, John. 5 minutes left.
5 minutes. Thank you very much. One of I think that this is, I already mentioned donut economics as one possible approach for local authorities and local businesses to work together to create new forms of business authority, to create new forms of circular economy models. But one of the most interesting ones that I think is increasingly being discussed in business schools at the moment is a thing called Three Horizons thinking. And apologies if you're familiar with this, but Three Horizons thinking basically says that, if we think of where we are at the moment, I often say to students, when they're planning their career, to take their CV, it's a well-known exercise, and to go through it line by line and cross it out with what you want it to look like in 5 years' time. It's a good way for kind of developing a personal career strategy. And on the basis of that, you develop your future CV, and then you subtract where you are from that and see what steps you've got to take so you can get there in the future. And knowing where you're going is often a huge help for career planning and development. The point is that the future is, as we know, it's completely unwritten. And if we look at where we are now, if we think of where we're going to be in the future, for whether we're a business or whether we're in local government or whether we're in a university or wherever it is that we have to realize that it can go for the good or for the bad as a result of that. So Three Horizons thinking is a pretty simple strategic framework that allows thinkers to conceptualize how change might impact their future. And they said there's three qualities of the future that are visible in the present: the way that things can go, continue the way they are, and maybe go wrong, or the ways that they can produce new offerings. So there's three potential horizons or alternative futures that we have to think about, because we have to be conscious of the fact that new tech doesn't often work the way that we want it to in social terms. So let's say, for example, Horizon 1, this is the dominant way of doing things today. Let's imagine dominant circular business economy models. So at the top here is how dominant it is in the way of our thinking, and the way that it's over time, it's going to produce decreased levels of value for us. So that's the dominant ways of things doing today. And Horizon 3 is the future that we want. This is, I've got it down here, right? Because I think that increasingly I'm seeing this amongst local businesses, and I'm seeing it certainly amongst the students, the young people who I'm dealing with who are in their early 20s, late teens or early 20s. They are very, very concerned about working with businesses that are genuinely engaged with climate action. So this is the future that they want, the emerging future that would take us somewhere positive. And in the midst of that, we have disruptive innovation. This is often talked about like a new technology that arises or a new approach to thinking about or doing things. But I like to think of disruptive innovation as things that have been pushed on us, okay, from the outside. Let's say, for example, the pandemic, the one that we're hopefully coming out of now at this stage in our national history. A very, very strange thing happened to us, and just at a very basic level. If we were to hold this, if it hadn't happened, we'd likely be in a hotel all together, which I think is important from time to time. But over the course of the planning for this conference and the work of the working group and the steering group for the Climate Action Regional Office's Economic Opportunities Project, we've been able to meet regularly, very regularly, from around the country online to do this happen. What does this mean? Let's say, for example, in higher education, this has changed student expectations. Could it go for the better or for the worse? We are presented with new opportunity for doing things. Now, if we allow these, I say, Jonathan, am I okay for a minute? Yeah. If we allow this
60 seconds, and then I start getting angsty, John. Then I'll get angry. Okay. You don't like me when I'm angry. I'm like the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, well, I'm afraid now. So we have opportunities to think about what we can use, what we have with us right now to develop business models that turn into could potentially result in worse forms of the future. So let's say, for example, social media platforms. If teenagers, for example, use it to bully each other, then it results in it aligns with the dominant horizon and it doesn't change anything for the social good. On the other hand, it can create the conditions that allow people to get information out about climate change, to allow people to mobilize. And we saw this in countries around the world when in the last 10 years, where social media was critical to helping people stand up to oppressive governments and regimes around the world. So we have lots of different options for doing things in different ways. So the questions that we have to think about, where we're trying to think about what our new business model is going to look like, is what is the nature of the innovation, the new opportunity that we have because of this disruptive change that's in front of us, and what potential does it have to disrupt existing modes of doing things? How can we use it to facilitate a positive future where we want to get to where we want? Or on the other hand, can it be used? What do we have to do to avoid it from going back to the dominant way of doing things? Because we can't return to that. This is local businesses, local authorities, and especially how they work together are critical to delivering climate action to create a better society, a better world, and a better environment for us all in the future. Did I finish on time, Jonathan?
You did. We'll say you did, John. Kabir, thank you so much. Fascinating to listen to that there. Amazing name drop in the middle of Pharrell Williams. I mean, that was just outstandingly good. I'm not sure if he got help from his Leo or not, but I presume he did somewhere along the way. But it just shows you the options that are there and the importance of getting it right. Because I'd imagine there are many ways in which you can do it wrong and you end up falling back into bad habits, which is what you're keen to avoid. Look, keep up the good work there in Maynooth University. Dr. John Cullen, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget, you can send your questions into us. Most of our speakers will be joining us for that Q&A session at about 12:15. And you can just do it by using the Q&A button, which, as I said, if you're watching on a laptop or a computer, you can put down the bottom, or else you can put it up to the top. John Murphy sent one question in already this morning. Can you confirm if the presentations will be available to download after the event? Well, John, the good news is if you did indeed register for the event, then you are going to get those presentations on request as well. So they will be available a little bit later on, just in case they whoosh by you and you want to pick out something a little bit later. Of course, one of the greatest ways you can get people to innovate and to encourage them to think about new things is if you put new funding in front of them. And there's an entire new funding structure being put in place to incentivize carbon reduction, net zero projects, and to encourage companies to do a new thing. And there's a lot of discussion around that this week, and we are delighted, I have to say, to be joined by the head of the European Investment Bank Group Office for Ireland, who's going to talk to us about what is coming and big plans to boost Irish climate loans that are coming down the track. Cormac Murphy is with us. Cormac, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for the great speakers, and yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to you, John. We have you down for about 25 minutes. I'll give you a 5-minute warning again, but other than that, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just, sorry, do you see on screen presentation?
Yeah, the screen has
Great.
switched to your presentation. It's in, you just need to switch it to the format where it's actually in presentation mode. I think it's just not there at the moment.
Oh, okay, excuse me.
So I'd say click on view.
Sorry, here we go.
Keep going across, there you go. And full screen mode, there you go.
Excellent. Okay, very good.
Lovely, and we're away. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thanks, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the opportunity, and to the Eastern and Midlands Climate Action Office, and also to the Local Government Management Association. Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity to speak today about the role of European Investment Bank, our cooperation with local authorities, but also the focus on climate action going forward. Let me say a few words first about the EIB and what the EIB is for those that might be a little bit less familiar. Sorry, I'll just scroll down. Yeah, the EIB is the Bank of the European Union. It's owned by the EU member states, including Ireland. And essentially, most of the EIB's activity is within the European Union, over 90%. There's also some activity outside the EU in line with European focus around the world. We're the largest multilateral lender in the world. We have roughly 3,500 staff made up of a lot of experts in various fields, in particular in areas like climate action, environment, sustainability, etc., but also transport, energy, and infrastructure. We're a AAA borrower. In other words, we issue bonds in the international bond markets at the best possible rates. And essentially what we do is we make those funds available, long-term funds at competitive rates for good, solid projects across Europe. Sorry a second. Our lending to Ireland is about €1 billion annually. It's $1 billion, but the makeup changes depending on the year. In other words, there's not necessarily a fixed focus on particular sectors. It's really a response to where needs and opportunities are. For example, last year, there was a lot of funding to the universities in terms of maintaining the capital investment program, 350 million loan, for example, to UCD. There was also extensive support in the climate action area for the smart meters program being implemented by ESB, but there were also particular initiatives like the COVID response, building on previous Brexit-related response in terms of offering support to the SME sector. And that was working with the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, the state banking institution, and essentially offering a guarantee facility to banks to safeguard and promote lending, long-term lending to SMEs and to the agricultural sector. Operations with local authorities have been an important part of things in recent years. There was a large 85 million loan to Limerick for the development of the Opera site, which is a significant regeneration, but also an economic project in terms of bringing new investment and basically creating an impulse for the further development of the city. We've also worked closely with Fingal and Cork County Council in providing funding for a variety of projects as part of their capital investment plans. And in addition to funding, we also provide technical support, working with Sligo on the development of a smart, sustainable development plan. In other words, very much in line with the context of today. And listening to John in the last session, while I didn't mention it in the slides, it's probably worthwhile to just, there are also, a couple of other areas that might be, less prominent, but show the overall role of EIB in working on, the development of ideas and opportunities with local authorities. For example, we're also working with the road management organisation under the coordination of Donegal County Council on the development of the public lighting programme. We've been working with Tipperary Energy Agency on the development of the local energy efficiency initiatives in the area. And essentially, EIB is not just funding, we also bring a lot of expertise and support, and particularly through initiatives like our ELENA program, which is our energy efficiency program, we can provide grants which can basically assist the development of projects and the recruitment of external consultants, etc. Overall, we're very responsive to national and EU priorities. That means big picture items like climate action, but also a green and digital recovery, resilience, etc. But also in terms of specific national needs, for example, the support I mentioned about SMEs in the context of Brexit and COVID. And now we're working with SBCI and the department on a new initiative targeting the energy retrofit of private households. And that is essentially looking to create a guarantee facility through the banks, which will offer the possibility of cheap, low cost funding to householders that they can combine with grants and other sources, and basically can undertake residential retrofit investments. And that was a program which was also highlighted in the National Recovery Plan published a few months ago. In general, as I said, we do provide technical assistance. The bank has a lot of expertise from across Europe in working with local authorities and working with regions and working with cities. Very common issues across Europe. A lot of interesting examples of how, well, basically how cities and regions and local authorities have responded to that, but also how the focus tends to vary depending on particular needs. For example, we've some programs focused on clean air. We've some programs, for example, in Athens, it's focused on climate, but in the context of adaptation and greening of the city. And energy efficiency is a very important theme across the whole of Europe, where there are also very significant opportunities and needs in Ireland. The context, of course, for today's session, and the Taoiseach obviously pointed to government priorities and actions, is of course the EU in terms of, you know, what has been set as a target for Europe in terms of climate neutrality by 2050. And that of course is backed up by EU funding and different support programs, including the expansion of the EU budget through the Recovery and Resilience Programme. But essentially what we're talking, I mean, it's a hackneyed phrase at this point, but we are talking about so-called building back better, a green and digital recovery. I prefer to put it, you know, we're talking about future-proofing investments, and we know where the world is going and we know what the needs are. So very much this is in the spotlight at European level and of course at national level. Net zero, I mean, obviously it's a challenge, but I think this slide is an illustration that it's a challenge across all sectors, everything from industry to transport to residential use of energy, etc. It's a common need. That means that there's also significant opportunity, but it also highlights the challenge and the need for fresh ways of doing things and the need for essentially, you know, good medium and long-term planning and funding that will allow this vision to be realized. In terms of investment needs, they're significant. The EIB has assessed, you know, we're talking about, you know, huge additional billions of investment per year over the coming decade and then beyond. A lot of needs in the areas of renewable power, electrification, and the development of new energy alternative fuels, particularly areas like hydrogen, higher energy efficiency across the board, decarbonization of industry, and investment in climate adaptation and resilience. And we know the latter in particular is an area which has been a focus of the Climate Action regional offices in terms of essentially, you know, what those investments should be, what the priorities are, and ultimately how to fund and how to support those. For EIB, and this is the context also for our involvement today, we are the Bank of the European Union. Of course, we reflect EU priorities. And as part of that, what the EIB group has decided is that 50% of our activity will be climate action focused from 2025. Last year, for example, it was 37%. So essentially, there will be a continuing increase in EIB activity and support across the board in support of climate action. We've also stopped supporting traditional fossil fuel energy projects. That has been an area which has been in decline over the last years, but for example, areas like natural gas, the EIB has stopped supporting essentially fossil fuel projects by the end of this year. Overall, we expect to support over €1 trillion of investment for climate action and sustainability by 2030. And part of that will, of course, be what we do in Ireland in terms of supporting the necessary investments. Our support for climate action in Ireland, obviously the target is to be on a trajectory to be net zero by 2050. A lot of investment in energy efficiency. I mentioned about the household retrofit program. There's also a significant need in public and private buildings. It was mentioned by John in the earlier presentation, energy efficiency of public housing as well, local authority housing, social housing. That's an area of not only need, but also significant potential in terms of not only reducing energy costs, but generally improving quality of housing. Public transport is obviously a key area. Regeneration, local and urban investment with an emphasis on sustainability, that covers a lot of ground. I mean, that is clearly highly important for the future, not just in terms of climate action and sustainability, but in terms of creating breathing, living, attractive environments, also for the attraction of economic activity. Flood protection is clearly a very important area. Renewables across the board. Forestry was also mentioned in the earlier session. Peatlands is an area that EIB is involved with at the moment on a more upstream basis in terms of discussing with various stakeholders and basically bringing in some international experts to look at the potential in terms of peatlands rehabilitation, but also water management, in terms of this being an area where Ireland has significant opportunity in terms of decarbonisation. Also, it's an opportunity in terms of the economic development. And essentially the peatlands, if you look at the geography of Ireland, this is a much more significant portion of the landmass than in most other European countries. So this is really a question of land management and how to best capitalize on the existence of the peatlands and as a resource for the future, including carbon, including tourism, including business and industry, etc. Decarbonisation of agriculture, that's obviously a wider issue and it's a challenging issue. But nonetheless, it's very clear what the direction of travel is. And I can point to, for example, some areas that EIB has worked with, which are essentially, all parts of the solution. For example, when it comes to animal foodstuffs, EIB has supported Devonish Nutrition. Devonish have ideas in terms of how to reduce the emissions associated with herds, etc., by virtue of foodstuffs. These are all separate initiatives, but all of them will add up, of course, to a much wider level of support for decarbonisation. And this is an area where EIB is keen to be active and supportive. Overall, of course, digital transformation is an important part of things in terms of realising that potential. I think we've seen during the pandemic how digital infrastructure and the availability of hubs, etc., does have a positive knock-on effect in terms of economic activity around the country. And this is clearly an opportunity for the future as well.
About 5 minutes left, Cormac.
Yeah,
okay.
In terms of our support and our activity with local authorities, we see local authorities as very important players alongside national government who can bundle and scale up local initiatives and sustainability investments. It's important to say, however, that lending, of course, is subject to the limits placed on individual authorities and the central government approval of borrowings. But nonetheless, EIB long-term loans that can match the availability or the nature of investments are something which can basically help accelerate and complement investment. As I said, we also offer technical assistance, and that can be a way to accelerate things and also share best practice and experience, which can also be very helpful in the quality dimension of developing and implementing projects. As I said, we've provided support to Limerick, Cork, and Fingal in recent years. In the case of Limerick, as I said, it was a large loan for a particular project, the opera. In the other cases, it's a framework loan we've used, which has brought together lots of different projects. And essentially what that means is that EIB funding is also available for smaller investments. When we talk about framework loans, lots of examples from across Europe, but essentially what they do is they group investments based on size as well. In other words, smaller investments are basically agreed and allocated based on reporting to EIB. Investments above a certain size, 25 to 50 million, we look for additional information to approve. And then large projects that are part of a framework operation, we do a direct project appraisal. But essentially what this is set up to do is to support as wide as possible a spectrum of projects with EIB financing. And that we believe is very helpful in the area of climate action. We're talking about projects in public transport environment, urban projects, social housing, I mean, pretty much across the board, but also in the public realm and in terms of amenities, etc., which are really, I mean, quality of life investments, and also important for sustainability, things like urban asset management, including parks, including greenways, etc. These are all things of interest and can all be blended and brought together as part of a common program. I'll finish just with Sligo. I think Sligo has been very good and very effective as part of the Northwest region in terms of looking at a smart and sustainable development program. And we're looking to essentially, you know, this initiative has been something that, you know, could also be developed and applied elsewhere across the country. And this is very much in the space of sustainability and climate action, and essentially smart development for the future, which I think has got very much an echo at the level of all local authorities and regions across the country. I've left some just details in the appendices on some of our operations and background. But I'll hand back to you now, Jonathan. Thank you.
Cormac, thank you so much indeed. And it's brilliant that you finished on Sligo, because that just sums up for me the opportunity that's here. We are no longer talking about something that is geographically limited to the East Coast or to a city. A lot of the projects that we're going to hear about over the course of the next 2 days could be anywhere. And I've actually just spoken in the last couple of weeks to companies right around the country who are in the green energy space, who are looking to partner, who are looking to grow and looking to evolve. And that's what I find brilliant, that this is not geographically limited in a way that perhaps previous industry could. I have to salute it's the fourth Climate Finance Week, which is underway at the moment. And I know that you're very busy with that. But for now, we will leave it there. Cormac Murphy, head of the European Investment Bank Group Office for Ireland. And indeed, those slides, as I mentioned, will be available to anyone who wants to look at those. And indeed, the appendices, which is a very hard word to say at this hour of the morning, a little bit later on. Thanks as well to everybody who is sending their questions in. I see them flying in. Alan, I see your question. Pamela, I see your question. Paula and Paddy, I see your question. And also John and Sean. And we will get to them a little bit later on, because we have our question and answer session coming up at about 12:15. And in about 15-20 minutes time, we will have time for our tea break, which is always to be welcome. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about supporting Ireland's move to the circular economy. And it is time to bring in Mary Frances Rochford, who is the Programme Manager for Climate Change and Circular Economy Programme with the EPA. Good morning, Mary Frances. How are you? And more importantly, where in the country are you? And is it sunny there?
It is. I'm here in the sunny southeast near Rosslare, so it's living up to its name this morning.
You're all, I tell you, I've never spoken to anyone in the southeast who hasn't said it's sunny even when it's raining. It's something that's built into you, but sure, if it keeps you happy.
That's it, exactly. Thanks very much for having me here this morning. I'm really delighted to be able to speak to you a little bit more about the circular economy, and John introduced it at the start of this morning's session, and also to take it down a bit to the ground level and talk to you about some of the work that the EPA is doing in supporting the development of the circular economy in Ireland, to highlight the economic opportunities that are there for the public and private sector. As John introduced it earlier on today, but I'm also quite mindful that there are maybe varying levels of knowledge in relation to the circular economy. So I'm going to bring you back a little bit and talk you through a little bit in more granular level some of the information around circular economy, building on John's discussion. So John introduced us to that dominant linear economic model, which is one of take, make, dispose. And really this is built around convenience through short-lived or single-use products and disposable packaging. And for those of us, you know, we see it in our daily lives. This happens in our homes, in businesses, and in work sites all around the country. And it's very much driven by this marketing nature of our economy, which drives this behavior that urges us to replace products, be they the latest technology, fashions, homeware, and we see it at all levels in terms of construction, manufacturing, and services. And long before we get the full use of these products or services, we dispose of them, often before they have passed their actual usefulness to us. The circular economy, on the other hand, as John outlined, is one where resources are kept in use for as long as possible, where we extract the maximum value from the materials and products while they're in use, then we recover, we regenerate products and materials at the end of their life. And a systemically circular economy is one where waste and resource use are minimized as a result of good product service design, which preserves that product value for as long as possible through durability and repair. And when a product has reached the end of its life, its parts are readily used over again to create further useful products. So in short, it encompasses a system that seeks to maintain and grow economic activity, though at the same time reducing the extraction and consumption of virgin raw materials. And when we bring this back to the purpose of our conversation today, we see that designing out this waste and keeping materials in use longer within a circular economy will target about 45% of emissions associated with the production of goods and food. So the circular economy really has a critical role to play in achieving the climate targets at both a national and a global level. Now, John introduced the concept in relation to waste management, and indeed, the circular economy is very firmly based in that waste management hierarchy, and the proposition of preventing waste in the first place is really the most effective way to reduce consumption. And it's not only that we see this in how we manage our waste, although recycling is quite a part of the circular economy. We see it in other areas, and John gave some examples. And one of the key, I think, one of the most tangible ways in which people can connect with the circular economy outside of the waste management aspect is in relation to, at a personal and indeed at a commercial level, the engagement with a product as a service model, which allows a greater use of products without the need for additional manufacturing. And a very tangible example that people are encountering now, and while they mightn't really realize or know of it as a circular economy activity, is that of urban car sharing schemes. And this approach, you know, offers new economic opportunities through leveraging digitization, smart technology to serve customers with a seamless and efficient service that eliminates the need for product ownership. We also see when it comes to resource efficiency, this is a fundamental element of circularity, and we see that businesses can ensure that the materials and processes are optimized to maximize utility, prevent waste, and reduce the consumption of virgin materials. Often in manufacturing operations, there can be byproducts such as offcuts and surplus production. And by applying circular thinking in these instances, partnerships can be formed between companies such that the byproduct of one process becomes the raw materials for another. And within a circular economy, the products and goods already in circulation are carefully managed to ensure their maximum productive life is obtained through reuse, repair, and remanufacturing. And this very much reverses the trend seen in recent years for products that are offered at relatively low initial selling costs based on driving frequent product replacements. And again, as I mentioned, often this marketing, fashion stimuli that's driving this, and indeed the design approaches that form these barriers to repair, often through deliberate planned obsolescence. So for items that can no longer be reused or repaired, these are dismantled to recycle the components in product and or indeed the materials that it's made from. And through this careful segregation and processing, we see these wastes then safely returned to manufacturers as a cost-effective raw material stream. And the thing about the circular economy is that this represents and presents opportunities for both social and economic returns that transcend all levels of Ireland's economy and really can be the foundation for economic and social development over the next decade. And it shouldn't be seen, I think, as an alternative resource use model, but one that is a national economic model in its own right. A global transition that Ireland must really engage with as a market leader in the provision and use of goods and services. And we see, and indeed John spoke of some international examples and some national ones where the circular economy is already up and running. And particularly Ireland is quite strong in this area when we talk about the agri-food industry, through engaging in the bioeconomy, for example, through whey products. And we also see quite strong examples in the pharmaceutical, waste and resource sectors. As John outlined, we've shown how this is happening at global markets, and it really is in response to consumer preferences and a drive and driven by consumer demand. And in an Irish context, 2020 Eurobarometer survey has highlighted that the two measures that are seen by Irish citizens as potentially the most effective at tackling environmental problems are firstly changing the way we consume, and secondly changing the way we produce and trade. So this indicates that while individuals may not be familiar with the term circular economy, there is indeed an increasing public appetite for its principles. It's also evidenced by the number and type of citizen-led sustainability initiatives and the growth and use of circular business models across the country. So while the move to a circular economy requires transformative system changes, some of them outlined by John, public awareness will also play an important role in informing consumer choices and driving circular demand. And the systems changes will need to be implemented by business and industry with the support at a local and national government level. And awareness and engagement among business, industry, finance providers, investors, and other market stakeholders are really critical, and this will require strong strategic attention in the coming years. The circular economy will shape future business models as a viable response to environmental and climate challenges. And there are really no doubt that the circular economy is at the core of this transition to a low carbon economy, and has a critical role in play in achieving the climate targets at a national level. So building on the 2020 Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, in Q4 of this year, the government will publish the National Circular Economy Strategy, and the EPA will publish its new Circular Economy Programme. The programme will build on the National Waste Prevention Programme, which has already been focusing its attention on the circular economy through its national initiatives. The new programme will look beyond waste management to promote circularity as an economic model and to enhance coherence and alignment among national, regional and local activities. It will provide a competitive programme of circular economy supports through innovation grants, sponsorships and seed funding. The programme will also improve national knowledge and provide an evidence base to inform circular economy development in Ireland. Our work to date has seen the EPA work within the circular economy across all of Ireland's economic sectors through advocacy and insights, innovation and demonstration, partnerships and indeed our regulatory framework. A key area in terms of leadership is in the space of public sector purchasing and the opportunities presented by green public procurement. We see that the Irish government's annual public sector purchasing accounts for between 10 and 12% of GDP. And this really does provide the public sector with significant influence over the provision of more resource efficient, less polluting goods, services and works within the marketplace. And in September, the EPA published its updated Green Public Procurement Guidance for the public sector and has been rolling out training for public procurers over the last 2 years. Green public procurement has an important role in Ireland's move to a green and circular economy, and this guidance will support the transition by providing step-by-step instructions and criteria for implementing GPP. Other soon to be published guidance in this area includes an update of the construction waste management guidance, as well as studies on textiles, among others. A big part of the work that the EPA is doing in this area is partnering across Ireland's economy, including the local authority sector through the Local Authority Prevention Network. The 2021 call is in the process of being awarded, but just to speak to 2020, we funded 15 local authorities to the tune of almost 90,000 to carry out community circular economy initiatives. And a key focus in 2020 was in the area of paint reuse, where we worked with civic community sites and local authority areas, and indeed funded social enterprises to deliver new paint reuse enterprises. This programme is currently being reviewed under the new circular economy work package, and we've been engaging with the CCMA and really look forward to working with the local authority sector in the design of the new programme to embed the circular economy in the work of the local authority sector. Other partnerships within the programme include Circulera, which is an innovation and networking platform established last year with 26 leading manufacturers to bring circularity into Ireland's world-class manufacturing sector.
And 5 minutes there, Mary Frances, if that's okay.
Thank you. We also work closely with the Rediscovery Centre in Ballymun, which is the National Centre for the Circular Economy, and working with its education, mentoring and demonstration activities. And they bring to life the circular economy through social enterprises, looking at paint, bicycles, furniture and textiles in a very real way. And through our funding last year, we saw 10 circular economy enterprises be mentored through the Rediscovery Centre's Circular Economy Academy. The Community Resources Network Ireland is also part of the National Waste Prevention Programme, and we supported their members to reuse over 18,000 tonnes of material, which saved over 117,000 tonnes of carbon. And really bringing, the circular economy to life at a number of different levels. We see through this resources network, that almost 800 jobs were sustained last year. We had a further 800 people trained and a volunteer network of over 8,000 people, all of which had a collective economic impact of 87 million. So when the circular economy is put together at the various different levels of our economy, we can see that it really does add up. We've also a number of other initiatives and tools in terms of how we reach out. The TREE model, which is an online tool for businesses to assess their resource efficiency, and also more recently the Repair My Stuff online repair directory, which has connected more than 800 repair businesses and now has over 73,000 users. So the circular economy is really gaining traction from the grassroots. The EPA then also has a role in relation to supporting and funding innovators and companies within the circular economy. And one of the areas that we do this is through our Green Enterprise Programme. And we'll soon be announcing recipients of the 2021 funding, which had a total fund of €625,000. We see that we had a great response to our call. And just to give you some example of the diversity of the work and funds that we have allocated over recent years, We're funding Era Composites Toronto, who are developing an innovative manufacturing process using recyclable and reinforced plastic to produce wind turbine blades. The Community Resource Network are delivering a pilot program looking at post-consumer textile collection systems. We're also funding St. Mel's Brewery and Palento Bakery in Longford, who have come together to use surplus bakery products as a raw material for beer manufacturing. And working like this not only realizes the value from a material that would otherwise have gone to waste, but it also creates a new product with a strong sustainable pedigree. We should lastly, just to mention the EPA's food waste prevention programme, which works across the supply chain and including the hospitality sector and with households. And the guidance that we've published in recent years can show how within the food service sector, businesses can save up to 300 million in food waste costs. So the potential to be realised within the circular economy is really significant. And finally, the EPA as an environmental regulator has responsibility for making determinations on byproduct notifications and end of waste through supporting the circular economy, waste prevention and keeping materials in circulation for longer, while regulating in a way that protects the environment. The circular economy is, as I've been saying, is one where materials, products and services are kept in use and in circulation for as long as possible and will play a key role in the transition to climate neutrality. The circular economy will enable individuals, communities, businesses and organisations to play their part through more sustainable and systemic change and to support more sustainable consumption patterns in the reduction of waste. Thank you all for your attention this morning and for your invitation to participate in today's event. Thank you very much.
Mary Frances Rochford, thank you very much indeed. From the sunny southeast, lovely to hear about the circular economy and how we can all actually play a part in that. We got too used to throwing things away. And there's so much more we could be doing to not just recycle things, but to make better use of them. And there is an opportunity even within that. It's been great listening to you, Mary Frances. Thank you so much for joining us. Lots of questions coming in. We've got local reps on with us this morning. We've got people from local authorities right around the country. Grace Heenan asked the question, will the link to the recordings for the presentations on both days become available shortly afterwards? Why, the answer to that, of course, is yes, it will. And it will be distributed via the very same email that you used to register this morning. Folks, at 10:56, that brings us to our first break in proceedings. So if you are in your office, pop down to the canteen. If you are at home, treat yourself to one of the nice coffees now while no one is looking. But we will be back and continuing on at 11:15, and we're going to be hearing some of the ways that this is actually happening on the ground. We've discussed the theory in the first part. Now we're going to discuss the reality and it being put into practice. We'll see you back here at 11:15. Now, everybody, hope you followed the advice. Grabbed a snack, went for a walk. I'm not sure if let the dog out to go to the bathroom was on your list, but it was on mine. And we've had a cup of tea in the meantime, or a cup of coffee to sustain us. So you're very welcome back. To those of you actually just joining us for the first time, I see there's more people here now than there was before the break. You're very welcome. We are discussing ways in which local authorities can really grease the wheel in terms of making new opportunities out of climate action, and how those opportunities are unique insofar as they can be anywhere right around the country. The opportunity is there for the taking. We just need to take it. We are going to hear over the next section from people who are actually doing this, who've got real life experience on the ground of making an impact and of ensuring that these companies can make the breakthrough that they need to make through and get the support that they need. Don't forget, we have got our question and answer session. That is coming up at 12:15. So in 1 hour's time, we have got 4 speakers who are under fierce pressure to keep it under 15 minutes. I tell you, I could see the first of them looking slightly anxious already, but same rules apply to you all. I'll give you a 5-minute warning just before you are due to finish up, and hopefully we'll get to that Q&A session a little bit later. And thanks to everybody for the questions that have come in that I will be using later on to make myself sound more intelligent than I actually am. So to our next speaker, I would like to invite Teresa Patton, who's the program manager with Green Generation, to turn on her mic and her camera. Green Generation, empowering Ireland with secure and stable renewable energy, which is pretty much on the point, Teresa, of why we are here today.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks very much, Jonathan. I'm just sharing that screen. You can see that okay?
We can indeed. Off with you. Brilliant.
Now my 15 minutes are starting now. So guys, once again, thanks to Breda Maher and Alan Dunny and all of the team at Carol Kildare for inviting us on here today. So my role with Green Generation is making sure that people understand what we do and why we do it. And so we'll run through that, and we'll definitely invite questions to the panel discussion after. So we'll kick on. What we do, so Green Generation is a renewable energy company based in Nerney, County Kildare, and what we do is we have an anaerobic digestion plant. We turn all types of organic materials into renewable gas, mostly food waste, because we see that as a problem, and we want to be the Packy Bonner at the end who saves that problem and gets a little bit more value out of that food before it is wasted. So anaerobic digestion essentially is a microbial breakdown of organic material in the absence of oxygen. And 2 things come out of that. So the bottom one there you'll see is digestate, which is a high quality eco fertilizer that is used locally on farms around us in Kildare. So that's the first aspect of the circular economy that we meet. So fertilizers going back onto the land again to grow food. So you've got full circularity there. The other product that comes out of that is a renewable gas called biogas, which is what every other anaerobic digestion plant is doing around Ireland. But what we do specifically at Green Generation is we upgrade that gas to biomethane, which is interchangeable with renewable gas. So once you upgrade biogas to biomethane, it's the very same constituent parts as renewable gas, but it is, as carbon gas, but it is fully renewable. So what we do then at that stage is we harness that energy to either, we supply all of our own HGVs and my own little Volkswagen Caddy with that renewable gas, or then we inject it back onto the national grid. Again, we're the only company in Ireland doing that. So we really see that as the way forward in decarbonising the economy. Now, Dr. John Cullen and Mary Francis at the EPA did an incredible job at explaining the circular economy. So we're big advocates of that as well. I won't delve too deep because we've heard about it today. So again, where we see our feedstock, we work with many different companies, but we really want to harness any food waste. Is not a waste to us, it's a resource. So we're trying to harness that and get some value out of it. So this is us in Kildare, a bit of a bird's eye view, just to explain really in real terms what we do. So if you follow the arrows around, we'll see that black truck coming in at the back there, and everything that's all food products and waste products and agri products are weighed coming into the plant. So everything's very data led where we are. So it's weighed in. It's brought to number 2, which is our intake shed. So we work with many different types of companies. Tesco would be our biggest retail client, where we work with them not only to recover their food to renewable gas, but we also recover their plastic packaging, their food waste packaging into other products that I'll come back to later. But Tesco is a big one for us. Domino's, Glanbia, Glenesk, we work with really forward-thinking, sustainable companies to make sure that there any waste that is unavoidable comes to us and we're able to recover it in energy. So that all happens there at the intake shed number 2. Then the food goes into our digesters at the back. It's turned into a sort of a soup first, and we very carefully, our plant manager, Dr. Stephen Nolan, very carefully balances the digesters, much like a human stomach, to make sure that the alkaline and acidity levels are spot on. So we put them in the food into the digesters at number 3, and then we capture the gas at number 4, which again, all AD plants around Ireland are doing this, but where we sort of stick our head above the parapet is at number 5, where we turn this renewable biogas, we turn biogas into renewable gas, which is biomethane. And so what we do with it then, again, we power our own HGVs. In the picture in the middle there, you'll see is our upgrader. So what's happening in those cylinders there is that we're scrubbing out the CO2 so that the gas that we produce goes from about a 60% biomethane content to 95% biomethane. And then what we do is fuel up our own operations on site. And then we take the rest of it down to our injection point in Cush, which is about 8 kilometers away. And then once we inject that gas back onto the national grid, it's the very same as the gas that you use to cook and heat your house, except that it is fully renewable because it's come from non-carbon sources. And again, not to labor the point, but we're taking the food waste problem and turning it into really a huge opportunity, which is great. And to that point, a lot of people ask us, well, why is not every biogas plant around the country doing that? And it's because it's incredibly capital expenditure intensive. So we've been supported here and co-funded by the EU and Gas Networks Ireland. So to give you an idea of why we specifically want to solve the food waste problem, is that because food waste, if we're a country, it will come third on to the US and China in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, which is pretty enormous. And only 7% of biogas plants around Europe are using food as their feedstock. So what we see as an opportunity, and how wasteful we are with food, is turning really that into an opportunity again, sorry. And then the bottom one you'll see there, Ireland, unfortunately, we have just one biomethane plant, but our Danish cousins, and now I think people are going to start asking me to move to Denmark because I go on about it so much. Our Danish cousins have a little bit less landmass than us and just about 1 million more people, so they've been able to develop 46 biomethane plants in the time that we have one. So in order to push this forward and really start pulling these emissions down and decarbonising the economy, we can only see that building more of these biomethane plants is the way forward. So again, the government have said before that we are laggards in terms of renewable energy, but there is a lot of literature out there to say that we have the capability as a country in terms of renewable energy, whether it's wind, solar, hydro, gas. We have to take every tool in our toolbox and throw it at the climate crisis because we're going to need them all. So what we're doing is driving forward our very specific section in the bioeconomy and trying to make good with that. So food waste, it's, when people come to site, it is an enormous problem that hits you straight in the face. So we are not pro food waste in any way, but what we want to do is take that food waste and turn it into value. So 33% of all food globally is wasted, So whether that's food loss on the production side or food waste at the retail side, it's an enormous problem that I don't think any particular government or actor can solve by themselves. But what we want to do is stop it at that. In Ireland, our 1 million tonnes of food waste is as high as 3.6 tonnes of equivalent carbon dioxide. And again, as Mary Frances said, that's about 300 million in the commercial food sector, where we want to turn that into something good. We work with, as I mentioned, Tesco really closely, and with that as well, Food Cloud. So in the food waste hierarchy, prevention is key, but as you go further down here, really feeding people is the next most important step. And where we fit in then is we work with Food Cloud, and any food that Food Cloud can't get out to their network partners, we work really closely with them to make sure that that food doesn't go to waste. So we not only have our AD plant in Nurney, we also have an adjoining farm where no food goes to waste. So we bring it in, it either goes to feed the animals or it goes to anaerobic digestion, which is great. And then the reason we do it is, you know, the studies across the UK, we haven't quite caught up with them in Ireland yet, but studies across the UK show that no other industry is more primed for decarbonisation as the HGV sector. So it's great to talk about electrification of the transport sector, but for domestic cars and buses, that's great. But for sort of heavy goods vehicles where you're pulling enormous loads, biomethane really is the way forward. So GNI know this, they're very, very quickly rolling out CNG stations across the country. We had 2 at the start of this year, now we have 4, so we're seeing real progress in that. And we as Green Generation are fully behind that as well. So to give you a really quick example, an awful lot of the companies that we speak to are based in sort of Dublin 2. If we were to drive to an organisation in Dublin 2 twice a week for a year, you're talking about producing over 11,000 kilograms of CO2, and we'd like to bring that down substantially by really using a renewable gas to power our trucks. So those
5 minutes there, Teresa, if that's okay.
Thanks very much. So to give you an idea of how many trees you would have to plant to bring those carbon emissions down, it's 806 trees per year just by using the renewable gas, which is great. Again, labouring point of the transport sector, 40% of all emissions come from the transport sector, and we see that as a real opportunity, again, to be solving one problem on one side and really decarbonising industry on the other. So 40% is a pretty big target to be hitting. Again, biomethane is the future. These are the types of companies that are getting behind biomethane and have either fully or partially transferred their HGVs over to renewable gas or biomethane, which is great. And once you see the logistics companies like UPS and DHL and DPD getting on board, you know that there is real benefit to it, which is great. Now, another part of our business, which is, so we have our digestate, which is going back on the land. We've got our food waste being turned into renewable gas, but we also now have developed a plastics business from working really closely with Tesco. So what we do is we take all, it's food waste packaging that we take in and we turn it into what we call high value products. So 8 million tons of plastic ends up in our oceans every year. And what we as Green Generation have set out to do is take as much of that plastic as we can out of the environment. So Ireland hasn't got a great history in terms of plastic. We have the most plastic per person in the EU and also the 4th lowest recycling rate. So that is, those figures are from about 3 months ago, which is really scary. So what we're doing is we work with a company called Paltech. They're a sister company of ours, indigenous to Galway. They are polymer experts, and what they've developed is patented technology called thermoplastic recycling, where we can take in plastic that has food contamination. We can wash it, dry it, and shred it, all using renewable energy, and we turn it into what we call high value products. So a lot of people ask us, can we make small itty bitty bits of plastic products? But what we're in the business of doing is taking plastic out of the environment long term. So products we have in the pipeline are motorway bollards, and all of the products we design have sort of got a double benefit. So motorway bollards would be generally fairly CO2 intensive concrete manufacture. Telegraph poles, then in the centre you can see we're developing this at the minute. They would be generally treated with creosote in Ireland, which was banned for domestic use in 2003, and I can see an all-out ban coming for that soon. So all of these products are designed with sustainability in mind. And then the last thing you'll see here, you'll recognise this if anyone lives close to a Tesco. There's 150 Tesco stores across the country that have these recycling centres in them. So Tesco have really put their money where their mouth is, and they're pushing on with their sustainability goals. And to give you an idea of the amount of plastics, and again, we're in the business of taking plastic out of the environment. For every kilometre of motorway bollard, we're taking 166 tonnes of plastic out of the environment. And then the telegraph poles are 400 kg of plastic per pole, which is great. Enormous. And, you know, if you pick up a handful of plastic, it doesn't weigh very much. So these sorts of volumes are really, truly innovative. These are a couple of the companies that we work really closely with. And what we're doing as Green Generation is just, you know, we're getting our story out there, and we're talking to like-minded organizations who want to come and speak to us. So with that, I'll pass back to Jonathan and we'll take questions at the end, if that's okay. Thank you very much.
That's 100%. Teresa, thank you so much. I love when I talk to any business, who are your clients? What are the names on the door? And you've got some great names on the door. And you've also highlighted there how other businesses are really adapting this and they're taking it on, because doing the same thing, as we've been hearing, hasn't been an option. So we have to find something new. So questions have come in for you, Teresa. I'm delighted to say we'll hold on to them and we will get back to you with those questions in our Q&A session shortly. Caroline Corrigan on Twitter says she's at the conference. Well, she's at the conference. She's watching where you are at home. On the advice regarding the fancy at-home coffee, she took it very seriously. Moily coffee, fair chain coffee, no less, she says. A bit of a problem with the biscuits, though, as there is none. I could do nothing about that. Had I known in advance, I'd have posted you some scones, but we can't quite do that now. But it's good to know we need to prepare for tomorrow, because this is a 2-day event. Right, let us go to Clare next. Clare County Council. Pat Dowling is the Chief Executive there, who is going to turn his mic and his camera on now. Pat, lovely to talk to you, and you're going to talk to us about rural working hubs. I'm a huge fan and advocate of these because they are the way in which people like me and you don't have to travel huge distances to take part in meetings or to get good broadband or whatever the case may be. We can see your screen. I'm not sure if that's your first slide, Pat, is it? We just have your mic off there as well. We'll wait a second there now. There you go. That's the first slide. And if you could turn your microphone on now, we'll be away in a hack, as they'd say. Nope, still can't hear you. We'll see if...
No, not better.
There you go. Take
Thanks,
it away.
Jonathan. Thank you for that. And Fáilte go dtí Cúnta an Clár, everybody. It's great to be on, and thank you for having me participate today. I suppose, first of all, just a few opening comments, if I may. You know, for all of us, climate change, it's everything, it's everywhere, it's all pervasive, and no longer can we pigeonhole the problem or the challenge that lies ahead. And indeed, at a meeting of Clare County Council only last night, some members viewed that we should set up a dedicated committee on climate change, whereas others felt that we need to make it more it needs to permeate across all our working structures and functions. And I think we opted for the latter, so that it's not a case of having a dedicated group looking at it. It's everything we do all of the time, and I think that's important. So that's a little bit of our story in Clare, and it's called DigiClare. I want to share some slides with you on that. And could I say that, you know, they say a picture paints 1,000 words, and that's the case here as well. We have a lot of images I want to share. And as you said this morning, John, we've heard a lot of the theory. Now it's a case of getting down onto the ground of what's going on. It's clearly said that, you know, that there is a school of thought around the assumption that cities are the best place to work, to live, etc., etc. And with climate action issues at the moment, with COVID and the pandemic we've had, I think that premise is something we need to re-examine. Experts say it's inevitable that most of the world's population will live and work in cities into the future. I think that we need to press the pause button on that and rethink it and reimagine our future as we go forward. And that's something that Clare County Council have been very conscious of at a local level. We only last week heard of the plans for a new city to happen within the M50 in Dublin of the scale and size of Galway. And that's the plan going forward. And I think it's important for us to maybe rethink that philosophy in the context of climate change and in the context of what we've been through in the last couple of years. Over the last number of years in Clare, we've been taking a rethink and a relook at how we do our business, and it's very much going forward for all of us. How do we live? how do we work, that whole life-work balance. It's crowds, congestion, congregations, possibly versus fresh air, positive recreation, and community. And I think it's very much what kind of society do we want going forward? What makes communities work? And how do we promote healthy environments? So Clare County Council have taken a strategic overhaul of our approach to it. We have a dedicated structure now around rural development and trying to promote our rural life in the context of de-investment, depopulation that's happening in the rural economy. We've also obviously adopted climate change as a major driver in everything we do. And anybody who knows Clare will know around ESB Moneypoint and around them moving from fossil fuel to offshore wind energy as part of their strategic plan going forward. That's a significant development within our county. And that's important. So it has been a central theme and continues to be one for us going forward. And just on that, I mean, if you look at what are the benefits to opening up work opportunities in rural areas, and that's why we launched and developed the DigiClare brand that we have today, and I'll go into more detail on that. There's the economic, social, environmental, productivity, and lifestyle benefits, as I said at the start, around rethinking that whole thing. And if you look at the issue around the implications of the way we live and work up to now, back in 16, as this slide shows, around what it took to commute to work versus what it takes now. And even I'm a victim of that myself in the context of spending maybe 2 hours a day commuting by car, around the pollution, the carbon footprint versus the productivity and lifestyle challenges that gives us. And definitely, I think, ladies and gentlemen, COVID has really brought a lot of this to light for us all, and I think has focused our mind. The other big issue, of course, then is around working remotely. The challenges are broadband connectivity, obviously, and in our case, we've had to look at buying the service from suppliers or through fiber connectivity, and also the other support networks that more and more are going away from our rural communities that we need to be aware of. So our objectives in creating digital hubs in County Clare was to provide top-class facilities with broadband, high-speed broadband located throughout County Clare, to enhance the ability of people to live, work, and visit County Clare. And when we're a popular county as it is, and during COVID, we became even more popular due to staycations and all of that, so that we would also have flexible facilities and services available for people, and that they could connect, communicate, and carry out their jobs effectively. And who do we deal with? We deal with a range of people. I mean, our experience over the last number of years, and we commenced the rollout of digital hubs pre-COVID back in 2018. And we now have 9 spread across the county with plans for way more. But our clients today covered the broad range from local communities themselves, small business people who have relocated from elsewhere, or are operating in difficult circumstances where they are and want to move into the local village or town where the hub is. Visitors who are on holidays, many have used it, e-workers, commuters. So the people who are availing of our services are very broad and in range, and more we're getting demand for the services we're providing on the ground. So if you want to look at what we have so far, we have over 90 hot desks throughout County Clare across those locations, up to 15 workspace offices. We have meeting rooms, video conferencing, printing, scanning, and copying, and we also have privacy booths located across the areas. So our plan is to grow this and double it. There is a national plan under the Department of Rural and Community Development around the rollout of additional hubs. We will be embracing that ourselves, but our DigiClare brand will continue to grow and expand as we go forward for the reasons outlined. And then if you want to look at the images that I spoke about earlier in the context of some of the hubs, and if you look at the one on the top right-hand corner there, Evolve Technologies, relocated to our hub in Ennistimon. If you want to look down at probably the wrong name, it's not a Cross digital hub. It's a digital hub in Cross in the Loophead Peninsula in West Clare. And that's an interesting example. That building was a school that had closed down some years ago. We worked with the local community, whereas the one above it in Ennistimon is one we initiated and built ourselves. The one in Cross is a community initiative where our brand is being used, but the local community open and close and maintain the building. That school is now, has been reopened as a digital hub. And if anybody knows West Clare and the Loophead Peninsula, Cross is a remote area, and the Loophead Peninsula, not too far away from Loophead Lighthouse, which is the last stop. So that is now open and being used by local community and local business people in the Loophead area. And that's an example of how we can impact positively in rural development across the county.
Couldn't make Falca, Pat.
The other ones then, I mean, we've many locations, hot desks, working groups, etc. as well. And if you see in the middle picture at the bottom, the meeting room, that's our meeting room in our Ennistimon digital hub. So I'm coming close to the end. I'll be ahead of time, I'd say, Jonathan. So if you look at the pictures here again, that's self-explanatory. You know, Clare, what can I say? We don't have to sell Clare. Clare sells itself. And everybody knows that in the country. And as somebody who has moved from Limerick City myself some years back, now live in the Loophead Peninsula myself, I can see the advantages of that. So it's very much around quality of life, working remotely in these communities, availing of the facilities of the hubs, and also availing of the landscape and the incredible beauty that is the West Coast. If you look at some of the data around our utilization, as I said, up to 100 hot desks so far, demand has been quite high at around 80%. Sometimes over the summer, the last couple of months has been very busy, and bookings continue. We expect them to slack off slightly over the winter months, but they will continue positive going forward. So what some of our endorsements are saying, some of the responses coming back from our customers of what they're saying the hubs are making available for them. They're self-explanatory there, as you can see on the screen. I suppose let's change the narrative and let's change the rule book of how some people tell us society will evolve and assumptions that are being made. It has put a spotlight on the value of remote working. The demand for facilities are such that the benefits are self-explanatory. We see that on the ground locally. You know, it's all about how we work into the future. So a revolution is underway, I would hope, and a revolution in a positive way in the context of both climate change and the various other aspects that we spoke about. And all I can say is that they say that character reveals itself in a crisis. Well, COVID, climate change, and all these things, it's about doing the right thing now and not just doing things right. I think we've got to reevaluate how we do our business. Work locally, connect globally, live life. And I suppose finally, Jonathan, to say that, you know, work, our job, our employment, our career, whatever that may be, our enterprise, about where we are. Work is what you do. It's not where you do it. And I think Clare is by far the best place in Ireland for that to be explored further and fully. And I believe that fundamentally. So that's a quick snapshot. All of this information is available online to do with DigiClare. So we hope that's of value. Jonathan, go ahead,
Pat, thank you so much. I love every single bit of it. The idea that you could go to Clare for 2 months in the summer, still work away, have your connectivity, hold your meetings in the way like we're doing now that people have become so used to, and that money then comes directly into your economy, stays there and sustains jobs into the future, and very high standard. I did think when you said Cross Digital Hub, it was a reflection on its mood, But I'm glad you explained that more than anything else. Pat, thank you so much. We leave you, turn the camera off for now, but we'll come back to you with some questions that have come in a little bit later in proceedings. I am delighted to say the sun has come out in Cork, which means I've been waiting all morning to say with confidence, I'm now running off solar power, because we had PV panels put in on the roof a couple of months ago, and I've turned into a solar bore. And I can tell you now that at least I'm off the grid for the next little while, unless it rains, which is a high possibility. So let's go from Clare to, I think, Dublin. Irish Manufacturing Research, enabling Ireland as a global leader in advanced manufacturing. Dr. Shirley Gallagher is a senior technologist there. Shirley, good morning to you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
We can hear you, and we can see your slides. You have 15 minutes, and I'll give it that 5-minute warning.
Great, thank you very much. And Fáilte Rótalig to this climate action economic opportunities. And I'm going to show you a real world example. And Pat, Thamishag Chacht. But currently I'm in Glasgow at the minute at COP26, Jonathan, but I do live in Cork normally. And Irish Manufacturing Research, I'll get into where we are based. So thank you for the opportunity, Caro and CCMA today. So I'm going to use Aristotle's idea in that I'm going to tell you what I'm going to speak about. I'm going to tell you it, and then I'm going to remind you in case you've forgotten. So I'm going to speak about Irish Manufacturing Research, which is an advanced manufacturing research centre for manufacturing in Ireland. I'll give you a real world example, and we've already heard it mentioned today, which is called Circulara. And I'm going to speak about Industry 5.0 and how Europe is kind of driving, the EU forward in factories for the future. So Irish Manufacturing Research, we're a technology centre funded by Enterprise Ireland and the IDA. We were set up in 2014. We are a company limited by guarantee, and we have 2 sites, one in Rathcoole in South County Dublin and in Mullingar in County Westmeath. And our role is to demystify, de-risk and deliver for industry in Ireland. And TRL stands for Technology Readiness Level, and the concept is with 1 to 3 years of research, something will be ready to be commercially available off the shelf. And that's where we're at in the research centre. So the greater than 2 up to 5 plus is academia, and industry can normally figure it out themselves if it's less than 1 year. So how do we demystify, de-risk and deliver? So we provide industrial research for manufacturing sites. We provide membership networks and events. We provide training, and we have 2 people who are really good at their jobs developing funding opportunities within Europe. So we're involved in a lot of European projects, which I know a lot of the local authorities are involved with as well. We provide a specialist consultancy service, and we broker deals between businesses and between whoever needs to be brokered. We have a specialist manufacturing service, and at the time of the pandemic, we were instrumental using our additive manufacturing, our 3D printing, to develop the masks for the COVID, and we have an incubator. So there's 4 pillars, so it's a 4-legged stool is what IMR is. We have digitization, and all the pillars work closely together. Automation and control or robotics. So we've got lots of toys in the Mullingar site. And we've designed for manufacturing, so additive manufacturing, 3D printing, and support for manufacturing in changing design of various things. And where I sit is sustainable manufacturing, where we have the nexus of materials, energy, and water, and how that fits with a zero carbon net manufacturing. And this is what factories of the future look like. So we've got augmented reality here with your man with his whatchamacallit on, and virtual reality, and we're also looking at the sustainable manufacturing. So I put Ireland on its side so I'd get it as all in. And I want to speak to you about our resources. So the resources we have, we've over 70 researchers from all walks of life. We've got a NASA scientist with us, and between us all, we've over 500 years of experience. We've got a large site in Mullingar, as I said earlier, and we've got pilot lines and development labs both in Mullingar and in Rathcoole. And as I said earlier as well, I said we've got plenty of toys. So we use these resources to impact industry in Ireland. And to date, we've 40 active research partnerships at the minute, a lot of them in Europe, some of them funded through Enterprise Ireland with IPP and so on. We've pulled in €8.5 million of research funding, and we have saved millions in productivity, in decarbonisation and efficiency improvements for industry. On the connectivity side, we're involved in 12 major EU decision-making bodies, so ISO standards, hotspots for circular economy, and various different things. And we also have strategic partnerships with 8 Irish academic institutes. And we have a 200+ strong industry network around the country. So, you know, one of the factories near you is probably a member of IMR. With the training and dissemination, we've had over 700 people attend courses and dissemination events this year. We're involved with schools and the STEAM projects with over 400 students. And we've had over 500 people attend Circulara dissemination events. These are some of the skill set. I won't labor on it, but we're listed in the National Development Plan, I think on pages 93 to 96, and we're here to help. We're here to strengthen climate ambitions, jobs in regions, and economic renewal for the decade to come. And now I'm going to talk about my real world example, and I'm going to check my time. I think I'm okay. So I'm going to thank John and Mary Frances for bringing up the circular economy. And the circular economy, the National Platform for Circular Manufacturing, was set up 2 years ago, and it's called Circulara. A Frenchman figured out that name, actually, which is really good. And the strategic partners are DEC, the EPA, Mary Frances is actually our project officer, and Climate Kick. And these are our private partners, so the private industry. So it's a €4.5 million partnership. So it's there to provide the transition to support net zero carbon circular economy. So we're nearly 2/3 of the way through it. And it's a really diverse network in that we have medical devices in the built environment, we have food, and we have second life enablers. And down here, these are startups that we support as well. So again, we're demystifying, de-risking, and delivering circular economy concepts through innovation demo pilots. So 1.5 million of that 4.5 million is spent on demonstration pilots. And for example, We Ireland, who is a member, they've set up a training course to enable white goods to be reused in some way. And they've set up a centre with Future Fit in Dunshaughlin and with Loudmead Enterprise Education Training Board, and that's running. And they had a place for 20 people and 300 people applied. So that's what we're trying to do with various different things. We currently have 37 members, and I'll show you where they are in a wee second. So how do we support these industries? We raise awareness. I'm here, I'm speaking to you, and we do this a lot. We share our knowledge and we build capacity. And I spoke about the demonstrators and the new ventures, and we've developed an ecosystem and collaboration. We're here to help, we're here to talk, we're here to sit around the table. So Circulara, We 27 manufacturing sites, we 5 startups in situ, we 5 more coming on stream. We have 8 support industries, so We Ireland, ERP are there as well, and we're in 21 local authority jurisdictions. And there they are there. So we're here to help. Teresa mentioned about the AD, the anaerobic digestion. That's something that we're looking at with a number of different players in the network, and we're really open to kind of how to create clusters. So you can see the big circles around the Cork, Limerick and Dublin area. We have a lot of members in there, and we see the local authority being an integral part in creating these cluster effects for the circular economy. You've got the infrastructure, you've serious amount of municipal waste to manage. We would like to help. Caroline Corrigan mentioned the donut economics. Kate was speaking in Cork earlier this year, and Roisin Markham has set up an Irish donut economic network. I did plan to mention that, and I did also plan to mention the 15-minute cities, which no doubt will be mentioned today. But one of the worrying things, and this is from the Irish Times this morning, that we have, and it's been mentioned in the messages, we have 40% renewable energy on our power generation, which is wonderful when the wind is blowing, but it is an intermittent supply. And when it's not blowing, we have dirty energy that's costly, and it costs a lot of money. So there's been a number of us meeting since January on and off, raising energy awareness. And there's a meeting next Thursday, week Thursday at 7 p.m. And if you want to get involved, please get in contact. So now I'm going to speak about Industry 5.0.
You have about 3 minutes left, Shirley.
Excellent, Jonathan. I'll fly through this. So anyway, we were at 4, and 5 is all about human-centric sustainability and resilience. And I'll read out the EU's policy. It attempts to capture the value of new technologies, providing prosperity beyond jobs and growth, while respecting planetary boundaries and placing the well-being of the industry worker at the centre of the production. And this is what it looks like. These are the projects we're involved in. And Gormaigad. So I spoke about Irish manufacturing research. I told you about the Circularity example, where there's an industry near you, and the Industry 5. And I think I've covered everything I need to cover, so I'll wrap it up there. Gormaigad.
Falter, ceding 3 minutes, Shirley, you're too kind, far too kind to me. And me trying to stay on time and do the best. No, really, really interesting. And thank you so much. I mean, you're obviously at the heart of it there if you're in Glasgow getting ready for COP26. So it doesn't get more focused and intensive than that, I'd imagine, over the next while. You will stay with us though, Shirley, because some questions have come in for you, which we will get to in a little bit. Now, so from Glasgow via Cork, we are, I think, going to go to Dublin next because we're going to talk about the Dublin Smart Region, scaling innovative solutions to local challenges. And Alan Murphy is with All Ireland Smart Cities Forum. You are in Dublin, Alan, before I make a fool of myself anymore, are you?
I am, Jonathan, a Limerick man sitting in Dublin. So just to
come here. We've 31 local authorities here. 4 of them are from Dublin. There's enough of them in a gang if we need it. But anyway, you're going to talk about smart cities.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. And I've got 15 minutes, I believe. Is that right? Yeah.
You do indeed. And I'll give you 5 minutes at the very end of the morning.
Okay. Super. Thanks, Jonathan. Just double checking that that's coming through.
Yeah, we can see that. That's in presentation mode now, Alan.
Okay. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. And big thank you to Anna Marie Delaney and the organisers for giving me the chance to speak to you today. So my name is Alan Murphy, Regional Manager with Smart Dublin. I'm going to give you a quick overview as to, well, who is Smart Dublin? Who are we? How we work? How do we deliver projects? So this is real world projects addressing the climate change agenda. I'm then going to give you a taste of those projects, and I've taken these headings from the recent publication by this group around international case studies across something like 15 different themes. I've picked 5 because time permitting, that's probably all I can squeeze in, and some key takeaways for you to ponder after this session. Okay, so Smart Dublin, local government initiative, the 4 Dublin local authorities. You see them listed there. You're probably all familiar with them. Our remit is to engage with relevant stakeholders, and I'm going to go over that that term in an upcoming slide, to address urban challenges and improve quality of life. Smart Dublin is part of an All-Ireland Smart City Forum, which is a community of practice bringing together cities and communities across the Republic of Ireland, as well as Northern Ireland. So you see there Belfast, Newry and Derry are part of this All-Ireland Smart City Forum. So everything I'm going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so, we collaborate with other cities. So we hear what's happening in Limerick, we hear what's happening in Waterford, and obviously we share knowledge on all our activities. Maybe just to set the scene a little bit and to demystify the term smart city. What this slide attempts to do is position the smart city along with terms like digital transformation, which is starting to permeate significantly through local authority organizations. The blocks there you see on the right hand side, which sort of lists emerging technologies, IoT, the Internet of Things, the use of mobile, the use of big data, all the way down to augmented reality and virtual reality. That's very much emerging tech or cutting edge technology that local authorities can explore to sort of glean information more from the public realm or outside the boundary of their organization. So it complements activities that are happening within the local authority that are possibly more traditional, for lack of a better phrase. So CRM systems and GIS systems is more internal to the local authority. And then the X and Y axis kind of hints at, well, we are dealing in cutting edge emerging technology. So the degree of technology innovation is arguably higher in the smart city space, and the degree of service transformation. So what we're talking about here is the transformation of local authority services. So we all have our service catalogs, and it's using or trying to explore technology to make those services better. That's what the Smart City program is all about. Okay, so then how do we work? We see ourselves very much as the innovation catalyst. So we provide the forum to bring together a whole ecosystem of stakeholders according to the needs of the use case or the project that we're delivering. So what you see here on the right-hand side is what we call our innovation wheel. And it's by no means exhaustive, but what it's trying to highlight is that according to the challenge or problem statement or project we're working on, we'll tap into our ecosystem of working with other state agencies, industry, be they small or large. You see some significant brand names there. Working with other local authorities, I just mentioned other local authorities outside of the Dublin region, working with higher education, working with research centres, SFI in particular. And then we also have 5 smart districts in Dublin where we can accelerate the deployment of some of the solutions onto the street landscape. And the arrow to the left-hand side is crucial in terms of the success of our projects. What we're doing here is connecting local authority service owners from a particular department, like social housing, like transport, like waste management, and according to the needs of that service owner, spinning up a project working with the stakeholders on the right. And it's worth pointing out that everything we do is truly scalable. We're trialing and testing solutions to address challenges of the Dublin local authorities, but all 31 local authorities are arguably in the same kind of business in delivering very similar services. So all our projects, all our lessons learned are truly scalable. Okay, so then to dive into the 5 headings I mentioned at the top, and we'll start with transport. So here are real projects that we're doing at the moment. So the picture on the left-hand side talks about something called MASS, Mass for Ireland, Mobility as a Service for Ireland. What you'll see in the diagram is a user using an app to do some journey planning and paying for use of different modes of transport. To use an IT analogy, MAS is the digital integration of many modes of transport on top of hardware that we all can touch and feel. So we can all touch and feel buses, bike sharing schemes, scooters are coming, definitely to Dublin, possibly other cities. And what we've done recently, we've worked with all the stakeholders in Ireland to understand how can these services come together in a digital way. So we've just finished our report. We're going to launch it in November in conjunction with the Department of Transport's Sustainable Mobility Policy. Huge opportunity here. Well, what's the problem statement? What's the challenge? It's trying to get people out of private cars and provide that kind of user-friendly digital experience to persuade people to choose a more sustainable mode of transport as to their preference. The picture on infographic on the right-hand side is a project we call the Smart Mobility Hub. So this is internal to councils. This is a poster that went up in DCC about a year, well, pre-COVID, trying to persuade employees to use a pool of EVs, a pool of e-bikes, and basically leave their private car at home, and allows people to use shared mobility when moving around the city during the working day. Been a huge success, and again, something, a project that's truly scalable to other local authorities, as well as to any large employer. So we're hoping to produce what we call a playbook to provide a toolkit and guidelines to any large employer as to how to spin up a smart mobility hub within their organization. Okay, moving on to other topic of transport. And again, all these projects are ticking that climate change agenda. It's all about sustainable mobility and managing transport in a better way. So this is all about managing the curbside. So again, whole different use case, whole different project with different stakeholders involved. So a couple of examples of how we're trying to tackle the last mile delivery. Picture on the left-hand side is digitizing the curb space. So your logistics providers can book loading bays in a virtual way. The enforcement operators are aware of the usage of the loading bay and allows for dynamic pricing, allowing different kinds of vehicles use the loading bays at different times of the day, or even at the weekends might be different to Monday to Friday. What you see on the right-hand side is a real installation of a UPS shipping container, for lack of a better phrase, description, that allows their parcels to be offloaded to more low emission vehicles that you see an example there for that last mile delivery. So there's two of those installations in the city centre in Dublin. There's other logistics operators like DPD, for example, are trialing this kind of very, very mobile consolidation hub, and then sort of a spoke model where multiple low emission vehicles would feed off that that hub. So they've done some trials in Laytown and Bettystown, and they're looking to other locations nationally to roll out their service. So really good examples of how to reduce the amount of vans that might be going around town delivering different supplies. Okay, moving away from transport now into another heading of public realm, and how are some of our projects looking at the public realm. So to pick one around connectivity, 5G and the role of local authorities. So we produced a discussion document, 5G and future connectivity, an emerging framework for cities and towns. So it calls out the challenges that local authorities will face to deploy 5G. It's a very different animal to 4G and 3G. And the diagram on the right-hand side highlights our preferred model around the idea of neutral hosting. So trying to reduce telecommunications clutter on things like street poles. So neutral hosting allows multiple operators use the same installation on local authority assets like street poles. So really interesting document if any local authority is interested as to how 5G could be rolled out in their urban environment. Moving on to the public realm, again, completely different use case. Again, we're talking about air quality. So we collaborated with Google recently. They've launched a Street View car, which is going around Dublin City Council jurisdiction at the moment, capturing air quality on an ongoing basis. So separate to the EPA fixed locations in the Dublin region, we're now moving to a world of air quality sensors deployed in mobile vehicles to try and get richer data around air quality.
5 minutes there now, please, Alan.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Moving on to the third heading around energy. We teamed up with Climote, which are an Irish company based out of Dundalk. And we've deployed 1,000+ Climote smart thermostats in social housing stock in Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown and Dublin City Council. A Climote device is available off the shelf, and what it does, it offers users a more interactive oversight of their energy consumption. For the council, what it does, it gives good insight as to the energy performance of their social housing stock. And we're using the data that we're getting from the smart thermostats to inform energy retrofit programs. So we'll know across certain social housing stock which units need intervention more so than others, and the types of intervention that need to happen, be it heat pumps, insulation, etc. So that's a project that's happening in the energy space. Moving on to tourism, we've got a whole smart tourism program. This is a collaboration between Fáilte Ireland, the Dublin City Council Culture Company, as well as the 4 Dublin local authorities. There's 4 pillars to it. If I could zoom in on the digital trail area, which is the next slide. So down in the Docklands area in Dublin, we're going to create a digital trail slash heritage trail for tourists to go around that region. But what this program has also done is produced a digital trails toolkit, which any local authority can look at as the best practice to create a digital trail. So that's going to be published imminently. Another example in the tourism area is for spatial analytics. We've worked with the Hugh Lane Gallery to understand the movement of people within the gallery. Again, feeds into things like understanding the effectiveness of the layout of exhibitions, for example, the average dwell time of tourists or visitors in certain sections of the gallery. Threshold crossing was really important when it comes to the gallery opening up again in terms of COVID-19 restrictions. And of course, marketing campaigns, if they want to market certain aspects of the exhibition, are they actually are people going to those exhibition sections that had been heavily marketed, for example. So really interesting technology in the tourism space. And finally, on water and water management. So we have a project looking at gully monitoring. And just to touch on this slide and how this is presented. So we sometimes go to the market with a problem statement as opposed to a list of requirements. So we put our hand up and say, we don't know how this use case around gully monitoring could be managed. Can you, the market, please come up with innovative solutions? This is an example of how we go to the market asking to collaborate with different stakeholders. And this is a real example of gullies deployed. You can see it there on the left-hand side. It feeds into a dashboard that the DCC team can use to prioritize where they'll send staff out to unblock gullies, for example. So last slide for me, Jonathan, apologies. I hope you get a sense for the breadth of projects happening in Smart Dublin. This is all about service improvement. It's not just about tech. It's all about open innovation, working with many stakeholders to address a problem. And of course, we share our lessons learned with all local authorities. So, okay, I think that's from me, Jonathan.
Alan, thank you very much indeed, and lots to digest there. What I love about all of that as well is it's understandable. Okay, when you've got people like me who might be the end user, I can at least see how that's going to work. I can see how that be relevant to me, and more importantly, what you're doing is generating all that data, because data is king, as we know. Smart or thick city, we're not going to get anywhere unless we have the data that's in front of us. Okay, folks, we are exactly at 12:15, which is where we needed to be for our question and answer session. So I would invite Dr. John Cullen, Cormac Murphy, Teresa Patton, Pat Dowling, and Dr. Shirley Gallagher, all to turn on your cameras if you can, please. And I'm seeing many faces appearing on the screen in front of me, which is a good sign. Have we got John? Have we got John Cullen? We do. John, first question goes to you, and it is one of those questions that I was paying attention to your presentation, but don't fully understand. So you might bear with me if I make a bags of it. How do we bring donut economics and three horizons thinking into the narrative around climate action at a local level? That makes sense, does it?
It does. That's a great question. Donut economics is inherently about the local, or it has become about the local. I think part of the reason for that is that Kate Raworth, who's very much kind of one of the thought leaders in this space, she's the thought leader in the space, opened this up to basically cities around the world a few years ago, and offered to work with them to put in place a donut economic model. Now, just to be, I suppose, not to oversimplify it, if you want to know more about it, there's a great book called Donut Economics, and Kate Raworth is spelt Raworth, if anyone wants to follow up on it. And she's got some fantastic TED Talks and things if you want to find out what it is. Essentially, this means is that we have to change the way that we live in order to sustain the biosphere, and she calls this, there's a planetary ceiling, things that we can't go past. But on the other hand, we have to ensure that we create a just and stable society, and business, of course, is a key role to play in this. Fair wages, in order to make sure that the people who are suffered the most as a result of climate change don't be punished by climate action efforts. So what she's done is she offered this up to cities around the world. I think Amsterdam were the winners on this, and her and her team have gone and worked with them and done some fantastic work there. This is a model for showing what that desirable future is when this begins. And the reason I think why Kate Raworth has become so interested in Three Horizons thinking is it's become a very useful starting point for local authorities to sit down with local businesses and to map out the process for how this can be done. You literally start with whiteboards or just writing up what you want the future of your city to look like within a 5, 10, 20 year time frame, and look at what's achievable within those. It's like so much else in sustainable business. It's like so much else in any type of circular economy business model. It starts at the design phase. You design things to be reused, to be sustainable, and to be fair from the outset. So when you're designing something, you obviously have the end product in mind, and the city and the local is the end product that has in mind. That's a great question. I think the two of them do tie up pretty well.
And I suppose, again, just trying to interpret what you're saying, John, just because another city has done it and might be further down the road, doesn't mean that that's going to end up being the best example of it. And we may end up with best example here from some of the innovation that we've been talking about today.
Exactly. Local variations on the same concept. I think we've seen a huge shift in the mindset right across the world to a sustainability mindset. I think everybody sees themselves as not a climate activist, but a climate action doer now. We've moved past activism. It's great to see young people protest, prior to the pandemic, getting out on Fridays for the Future and all of these things. It means that they're concerned. But I think everybody, once you reach a certain age and you become, I suppose, a full participant in the economic and social life of society, it's your responsibility to move it from activism to action. So the local level is where it happens.
Yeah, it's a killer when you end up in charge, isn't it? An absolute killer. John, thank you very much for that. I mean, it goes to the core of everything that we're talking about. If you put climate change and climate action at the center of every decision-making process, you're not going to go wrong. If it's baked into the center of it, all the decisions will flow from that. You just can't bolt it on afterwards because that doesn't work. Cormac, you'll be delighted to hear that there's loads of questions for you because you're the money at the EIB, right? So we're going to put some of the questions that have come into you. If you can turn your mic on there. Would EIB fund research projects directly, or would it be funded through an academic institute? Ask somebody.
Yeah, I think research projects, I mean, they can be undertaken by academic institutions. They can be undertaken, of course, by, corporate entities and, the private sector. Yeah, it would be important just to understand what the context is. We've also, worked closely with Science Foundation Ireland. So it's also just important to understand, how this thing has been channeled at national level as well.
Okay. Next question. Could you expand on the technical support services that you provide to local authorities and where someone might find out more information on them?
Yeah, we have an EIB advisory hub, which basically is our advisory service. So there is a contact point there. Also, I can assist as the EIB Dublin office. Basically, we have a specific program called JASPERS. JASPERS works with DG Regio of the European Commission to support essentially regional projects, particularly projects that can benefit or are eligible for EU funding. So there's a number of different arms, but JASPERS is the arm of EIB, which is a joint assistance program for European regions, which is basically working across the European Union with different towns, cities and regions. So essentially has a very good core of experience.
Okay, next question. In light of yesterday's advances on reduction of methane emissions by 2030, could you expand upon EIB's thinking on investment in agriculture and indeed on fossil fueled transport? Well, we heard a little bit more of that after we spoke with you last, but is that an area that the EIB could look at investing in the future?
Yeah, I think fossil fuels for us, we've decided not to fund straight fossil fuel projects from the end of this year. When it comes to things like renewable gas, I mean, this is an area of interest. Obviously, I think Teresa mentioned, there's also a question of scaling up economics, offtake, intake, et cetera, so there's things to understand there. But when it comes to, in general, agriculture and decarbonisation, I think there's a whole series of initiatives and efforts to take place there. Some may be at a very local level, some could be at the level of co-ops, et cetera. Yeah, I think we have an openness to look at things, but we'd view it very much as a sort of a wide spectrum. In terms of technical support and experience, we can see how the bioeconomy is developing elsewhere in Europe, for example, France or Italy. There's some very good examples there of how things are being exploited and developed. So this is part of a dialogue for the future.
Okay, I'm going to ask the undiplomatic question. How complicated is it to apply to the EIB? I mean, it's the kind of thing that would have me waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, that level of form filling. But is it straightforward, or has it been made user-friendly for those who might be newer to the process?
The previous EIB Vice President, Andrew McDougall, we set up a Dublin office at the end of 2016, start of 2017. So, that's a very useful entry point into EIB. I think Andrew at the time sort of joked a bit that, picking up the phone and somebody answering in French in Luxembourg might sort of put some people off. The reality is that, a lot of stuff is on the internet, a lot of contact points are on the internet. You've got the EIB Dublin office. Things work pretty well with Ireland, and please feel free and confident to get in touch.
Okay, that's good. And one more that's just come in. When it comes to the LIFE programme, what level of support is there for project writing for the likes of carbon farming ahead of the November 30th deadline? Again, many parts of that I do not understand. Hopefully it makes more sense to you.
Yeah, well, this is, okay, I'm not an expert on the LIFE programme. I mean, carbon farming in general, and it extends to areas like, the peat bogs in the future as well, their role in the carbon economy. that's an area which is developing fast, but still, has scope to develop a lot further. And I think one thing that we would pinpoint or highlight is, the corporate social responsibility dimension of things, the involvement of companies. I think on the biogas, the involvement of Tesco and others, we can see that Intel have got involved with the National Park Service in terms of re-wetting of land in Wicklow bogs. So there's a lot happening in that space in terms of the development of the carbon economy, but it's something that's very much in process at the moment.
Okay, very good. Cormac, we will leave you be for the minute. Stay on the line just in case another call does come in. Speaking of biogas, Teresa Patton, we'll bring you back in. Back we go to Kildare. Some of the questions for you. Is it better for the government to spend money to discourage food waste rather than facilitate its green disposal? Well, I'd imagine if you don't generate it in the first place, it's a far better starting point, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think coming from both ends of it, you really want to be designing, and the circular economy is all about designing out waste at the start. So if we were as a country able to waste less food, we'd be in a much better position. But for our company, what we're trying to do is get that food out of the waste line before it becomes truly waste. And something that Cormac touched on there, it's not just food waste, it's agri waste as well. So the likes of Kildare County Council they're pushing on. So we've gotten in contact with them in the last month. So they're sending all of their green waste to us now as well. By just opening the conversation and looking at how they treat their waste, they were able to send it to us instead of letting it sort of just decompose. So the food waste thing it's an enormous problem. And I did a thesis on innovating around food waste last year. Once you get stuck into it, you can see how complex and extended supply chains are. But as a nation, as citizens, we need to question, if we're buying a bag of carrots for 49 cents, how much of that 49 cents is the farmer getting? So there's a question around the price of food and the value of food as well to start with. So it's a big, old, long, complex conversation to have.
But at least if we know there is somewhere for it to go if there is waste left
Absolutely.
over, which is important. Question: how many people does your company employ through the anaerobic digester and the plastics unit? I mean, I love that plastic motorway bollard, by the way. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I suppose it's us using all of the streams to use Circulytic. So we have in Nerney, we have 45 people on a full-time basis from the local area, and Paltic have, I think, 5 or 6 people in Galway, and they travel to Kildare probably once a week. But we're, for the time being, we're hoping to expand fairly dramatically over the next couple of years to make sure that we're getting all of the value out of that organic waste and plastic, and making sure that it goes to good use as well. So,
and that goes to the point I was making earlier on. These are jobs that can be anywhere. They are not geographically specific to one location. You might have an opinion on this one. My car can also run on bio LPG, but there's very few refilling stations, which can be frustrating if you live in a rural area. Surely the government can do more to promote this alternative fuel. Electric cars are not the whole solution. Regular cars can be easily converted to LPG, but there's no incentive. So can the gas power agricultural vehicles?
Can indeed. So there's all vehicles really can be powered by gas. Now my little Volkswagen Caddy that I've got sitting out there runs on renewable gas, but I live in Donegal, I work in Kildare. There's no gas stations up here, which is, I'm a bit of a pain in the butt to GNI because I'm always on to them about opening gas stations. But really, to decarbonize the transport sector, we need to throw again every tool we have at it. We've got 5% ethanol in all of our petrol at the minute, and just by increasing that to 10% is it's a pushing a button, to use Michael O'Leary's analogies. It's pushing a button, and that would be the moving from ethanol 5 to ethanol 10 would be the equivalent of putting 100,000 electric cars on the road overnight at no extra taxation. So between biomethane fueling trucks, ethanol in our petrol and electric cars, we need to sort of throw everything at the problem to make sure we're getting those emissions down.
Okay, one more before I let you relax. You highlighted how far behind other EU countries like Denmark we are with regard to AD generated energy. What, in your opinion, are the incentives needed in Ireland to develop AD as a renewable source. Now, again, I'm sure we'd all love to go and live in Denmark. Fine place, made Lego to begin with. But you've managed to create how many? 60, it's like 50 jobs out of that, more common. What incentives would you like to see in place so that your company can grow and others might indeed move into the space in other parts of the country?
I think probably more awareness, which is part of my role in speaking about the bioeconomy. So it's sort of, the bioeconomy has been not the bold child, but it's been something that government have been reluctant to look at. It's certainly gaining traction in the last couple of years, but it's really focusing on the good things that can come out of the bioeconomy. I think the initial messaging around the bioeconomy 5-6 years ago was pretty bad. There was people logging into webinars and the bioeconomy was shown as people burning down forests, growing trees to burn them to make electricity or gas. So we need to change the narrative around what the bioeconomy is and the benefits of it. And then I think, we've invited a few of the government, the TDs down to Green Generation, and we really just want to show them what we do. Getting people on site is great for us because they can see with their own eyes rather than me just telling them the benefits of it. They can see the circular economy in action in a couple of ways. So it's really, from a government point of view, it's sort of feed-in tariffs that they have across Europe. There's very big support for the bioeconomy across Central Europe. And you can see the benefits of that in their decarbonisation plans.
Okay. You just reminded me that I made a holy show of myself on radio about 3 weeks ago, filling in for Pat Kenny when we were talking about burning plastics in a controlled environment. It didn't end well for me. Let's put it that way. But I consider it as an education, as I did today speaking with you. Pat Dowling in Clare County Council. Let's go back to you. Pat, you showed us the network of hubs that you have there. Somebody is asking, how did you decide where to put those hubs?
Yeah, I mean, it was based, obviously, we started off in the rural communities in Feakle and Milltown, Malbay, where we had facilities of our own. We were able to adapt them. Now they're small facilities. And then the demand grew as we went along. So it's very much focusing on when communities come to us to want to work in partnership with them. And also for us to look strategically at our settlements. Now, the one in Ennistimon, for example, was an old shopping centre that we bought, and it was then funded. And I meant to say that, Jonathan, we wouldn't have been able to do a lot of this work without the Rural Regeneration Development Fund under the Department of Rural and Community Development. That's been a key enabler for us. So it's very much on the basis of local demand, but obviously where there are populations where a project like this will have a significant impact.
And how then does it tie in? We'll be speaking with Patrick McAwee tomorrow, who of course is the powerhouse behind the Leo in Clare.
Yes.
And how does it tie into the Leo? I mean, do you say, well, we know that there's a load of activity over there for that Leo, so those lads can go to that one?
It ties in totally with the Leo, because the Leo and our team on the digital hubs work in unison together. So they're very much complementary. And I mean, Pádraig from the Leo office will be very important to us in identifying strategic locations as well. And also indeed, would have mentored a lot of the small businesses who are availing of our spaces. So it's carefully tied together.
One last one for you, Pat, if we can. I'd never say I didn't ask tricky questions. When will the Ennis Hub be operational? It was soft opened in July, but still not accessible to the public.
Yeah, there's people working in there at the moment, and full services will be available online within about 10 days.
You see, there's never not a straight answer from Clare. That's my experience over the years. Brilliant. Okay, we leave it there. Pat, stay with us on the line in case another question comes in. By the way, Mary Frances Rocher from the EPA had to leave us, and some questions did come in for her, but they're going to be answered offline afterwards. So if you did ask a question, we'll try and get an answer to you a little bit later on. Right, let's go to, who will we go to next? Shirley, I think that the question came in for you. Here it is. Do you feel IMR Circulera are making or can make progress in influencing the legal and regulatory framework to support circular economic activities, i.e. making it easier for those working with used materials or reused materials?
So Jonathan, that came from Eileen Crowley. So we don't have the authority on regulations. That's the department and the EPA's role. But the whole innovation projects are there to kind of support and help companies in driving that and kind of figure out, teasing out where the problems are. So there are a number of our industry network that are applying for end of waste licenses and byproduct licenses that are issued, and they're in a holding thing. And she actually also mentioned about hotspots. There are a number of organizations within Europe, and we're involved in that. And again, there's various different projects. I think MTU have another one, and Leo are working in the circular economy as well. So I hope that answers your questions. And I suppose just to finish, we have a number of thematic working groups, so procurement, design, plastics, bioeconomy, that we look in depth to help our network.
Just, it gives rise to one question for me, and this is going to keep coming up time and time again, because we are moving from a time when we didn't do any of this kind of stuff to a time where we're going to have to do a heck of a lot more. And sometimes it takes officialdom a little bit of time to catch up, because it moves a little slower than sometimes industry would like. Is there a way to speed that process? Collaboration is great and everything. Is it down to the likes of local authorities, the likes of government agencies listening to industry to work out, well, this is the demand now. If we want to get to that 2030, 2050 target, we have to listen.
I would completely agree with you, Jonathan, but also if you kind of think 50 years ago, we didn't have the plastics we have now. 100 years ago, we had all the copper pans and pots that are hanging in our pubs now. There was one for ale, there was one for milk, there was one for water. So we really have to kind of look at where we were, and the trajectory of the linear economy and the take, make and waste, using the plastic and kind of readjusting, and the design is very important going forward.
Okay, very good. Alan, we'll go to some questions for you on smart cities if we can. You included private bike sharing operators into the app, apparently. There's obviously going to be different companies trying to do different things. The question from this person is, how can income sharing be resolved between operators, public and private? So when you have a very simple way of reaching Aegis like me, who want it one way and one way only, how can you work out who's paying for what, who's charging for what and when?
Yeah, okay. So revenue sharing and the distribution of payments is very much back-end stuff, and something that we really don't want to confuse the user on. So mobility.
I'm easily confused now. Don't get me wrong here. I'd be the first one to fall off the bike.
Yeah. So the beauty of mobility as a service, and I just didn't have enough time to justify it. It's scalable upwards as well as downwards. So what does that mean? We could have a world where we have a TFI national app where all modes of transport, shared mobility, sustainable modes of transport are available on a single app for Jonathan to plan his journey and pay for it, etc. We could have a national app where it's all you can eat mobility, priced at something like Vienna did, which was 365 euros for the year. So €1 per day for all mobility transport, be it a bike sharing scheme, Irish Rail, car clubs, whatever it might be. That's one scenario. But then, and that's at the national level. What MAS also allows is something far more hyper-local. So think you work for a large employer, or you're a student in university, or you're in a business district. That hyper-local setup decides to spin up a MAS app or offering for the students or for their employees. The pricing and all that is tailored for that user cohort. So it's very different experience to the national one I've just described. Whatever mobility providers sign up to that user service, it's a commercial conversation as to what revenue